Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back from lunch. So we have quorum based on those that are here and based that are joining us online. So without further ado, I suggest that we get started with agenda item 8. So I will hand it over to the co-chair. Mr. Co-chair, please.
Thank you, Naomi. So this session will be looking at agenda item 8, which is the GEF IEO's annual performance report 2025. And I'd like to introduce Ms. Geeta Batra from the GEF IEO to introduce document GEF/E/C69/01, the GEF IEO annual performance report. Over to you, Geeta.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a little bit of a marathon evaluation session at this 69th GEF Council meeting. We've structured today's session around 5 key evaluations, starting with our annual performance report 2025, a deep dive into our international waters focal area, a first ever evaluation on the socioeconomic co-benefits, GEF's experience with nature-based solutions, and finally the FY25 work program and budget. But first, I just want to spend a few seconds talking about the 8th comprehensive evaluation, OPS 8, which is on everyone's minds. OPS 8 is our GPS or lighthouse. It offers a clear evidence-based route to help navigate towards GEF 9. The purpose of OPS 8 is to assess performance, unpack effectiveness of policies, and provide the Council with actionable insights ahead of GEF 9. We presented this highlights document in Paris. It was an interesting session, and the document, along with a summary as well as a brief, is available on the GEF replenishment website as well as on the GEF IEO website. We will be sharing a succinct version of that presentation on Friday at lunch, and you are more than welcome to join the IEO team. For those who didn't attend in Paris, it'll be a fresh start for you looking at that document. And for those who would like to listen to it all over again, you're welcome to join the lunch too on Friday. But with that, I'd like to hand over to our team to present the annual performance report 2025. I want to say that Neeraj has been leading our work on performance at the GEF IEO for 15 years, and Janine is our lead on validations of evaluation reports that we get from the terminal agencies, as well as leads our work on behavior change and broader adoption. Neeraj, over to you.
Thank you, Geeta. The Annual Performance Report 2025 presents an assessment of completed projects, focusing on aspects such as project outcomes and sustainability at completion. Additionally, the APR offers an analysis of project cycle efficiency, identifying areas of improved performance and challenges. It also examines the timeliness of terminal evaluation submissions. The APR 2025 analyzes performance of a cumulative portfolio of 2,384 projects, with terminal evaluations validated by December 2024. These projects account for 10.7 billion in GEF funding and 69.4 billion in realized co-financing. The cumulative portfolio also includes 250 projects for which terminal evaluations were validated within the last 2 years. The GEF maintains a strong record of satisfactory outcome ratings with improvements over time. A higher percentage of projects from international waters, chemicals and waste focal areas, in Asia, Europe and Central Asia, and global projects are rated in the satisfactory range. Of the projects implemented in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, SIDS, and fragile and conflict situations, a lower percentage is rated in satisfactory range. Performance is similar between standalone and child projects of integrated programs. Sustainability ratings have shown modest improvement over time. However, a significant share of projects still face substantial risks to achievement of long-term objectives and continuation of results beyond project completion. Country context remains a key factor, as projects implemented in SIDS, LDCs, and fragile or conflict situations are more likely to encounter these risks. Our previous evaluations highlight the critical role of partner selection and the development of strategies to secure financial support for follow-up activities as critical for ensuring sustainability.
As pointed out in a previous staff report, sustaining interventions requires lasting shifts in behavior, especially among local stakeholders who interact directly with the environment. Targeted behavioral changes include practices such as planting native crops, segregating waste, or complying with stricter fishing regulations. Climate change projects have promoted the adoption of technologies like LED lighting and renewable energy microgrids. Others aim to reduce environmentally harmful behaviors such as poaching and mercury use. Despite this focus, fewer than half of the projects included explicit behavior change indicators. This is a missed opportunity. Most GEF projects aim to influence behavior by building stakeholder knowledge and skills in pro-environment practices. Indeed, a lack of knowledge and technical expertise was the most frequently cited barrier to behavior change. A positive example: in Azerbaijan, an agrobiodiversity project provided training and institutional support to local farmers who faced low crop productivity. As a result, the number of households switching to native crops exceeded targets by more than threefold, leading to the restoration of over 1,000 hectares of degraded land. GF8 projects so far show a stronger focus on activities that are aligned with stakeholder needs and that address institutional and individual barriers, both of which are more effective in promoting lasting behavior change. But sustaining new behaviors beyond project completion depends on factors beyond training: access to capital, continued institutional support, and reduced costs of adoption to enable scaling beyond pilot phases. Projects that incorporate these elements are more likely to deliver lasting and replicable environmental benefits. In this video, fresh from a field visit we did just last month, a project participant from Zambia shares how poaching has virtually ceased in their community. By funding alternative livelihoods that provide both income and protein sources, the project has significantly reduced their need to hunt wildlife.
We have been experiencing a lot of issues of encroachment, issues of destruction of the forest, and the poaching was very high. But with the coming of the project, it has helped us in terms of reducing poaching, to make our forests to be intact so that our local communities benefit from the natural resources.
Broader adoption, on the other hand, refers to the continued uptake of GEF-supported interventions through sustaining, mainstreaming, replication, or scaling up without further GEF funding. In our review of completed GEF 6 and 7 projects, we found that 62% showed some form of broader adoption by project end. The most common form was mainstreaming, especially into government systems. Most of these projects led to the formal adoption of policy and legal instruments, such as national strategies and environmental laws that were developed with GF support. About 40% saw institutional capacity building efforts, such as monitoring systems, integrated into regular government operations. When it comes to practices that directly deliver environmental benefits, like crop rotation and electrical vehicle use, these were sustained or replicated in less than a fifth of projects. The Green Climate Fund, or GCF, is widely recognized as a key platform to scale up successful GEF initiatives, particularly in climate change mitigation and adaptation. Our review of 253 approved GCF projects found that 17% explicitly aim to build on GEF-supported work, with scaling up being the most common approach. A sustainable land management or SLM project in the Philippines, completed in 2019, offers a strong example of how both local and national governments can continue and expand on project initiatives after GEF support ends. 1 year after the project closed, the city government began replicating SLM practices, using its own agriculture budget to provide inputs to farmers. The provincial government also scaled up these practices, using its disaster risk reduction fund, recognizing SLM's potential to reduce landslide risks. At the national level, SLM has since been integrated into land use planning guidelines and agricultural programs. This has encouraged other local governments to allocate their own budgets to adopt these practices. It's worth noting that this was a relatively small project, funded with less than $1 million in GEF grant over 4 years. But what made the difference, according to stakeholders, was the type of support it provided: pilot demonstrations and extensive follow-up that previous government programs didn't offer. That long-term engagement laid the groundwork for broader adoption.
For a project to achieve its objectives, effective implementation and execution on ground are critical. We have seen a slight increase in the percentage of projects rated satisfactory for implementation quality. Execution quality, which refers to how well partners and executing entities carry out activities, remains solid. GEF agencies generally maintain strong implementation standards across a range of project types and country contexts, but execution quality tends to drop in settings with limited capacity or in fragile and conflict situations. Monitoring and evaluation, or M&E, quality has improved over time, particularly in design phase. However, progress in implementation has been limited. Projects in the chemicals and waste focal area have shown some of the most notable improvements in M&E quality. That said, in fragile and conflict situations, both M&E design and implementation continue to face significant challenges. M&E design in these settings is often weaker, partly because there is limited focus on process indicators, which are more appropriate for dynamic and unpredictable environments. Implementation also remains difficult due to ongoing capacity and operational constraints. Co-financing is an important way the GEF demonstrates its catalytic role by leveraging additional resources beyond its own funding. Across 2,384 projects, a total of $60.6 billion was pledged in co-financing, and 69.4 was realized. This is especially notable given that data was missing for over 300 projects. Overall, co-financing commitments were fully met or exceeded in 55% of projects. In GEF 6, this figure rose to 63%, showing some progress compared to earlier cycles. We have seen improvements in several areas of GEF activity cycle, though some challenges persist. PIF approvals are now more timely, supported by tighter submission deadlines and better alignment with the GEF Council meetings. The median time from PIF approval to CO endorsement has shortened from 23 months to 19 months. This reflects stricter enforcement of cancellation policies and fewer pandemic-related delays. However, most full-size project proposals still take longer than 18-month standard. The median time for CO endorsement to first disbursement has increased in recent cohorts, largely due to startup delays caused by the pandemic. Implementation duration for full-size projects has remained steady, while medium-sized projects have seen some reduction in time. Notably, child projects within integrated programs tend to have shorter preparation times compared to standalone projects, though both have similar implementation durations. Timely submission of terminal evaluations is essential for ensuring accountability and promoting learning. For completed projects approved from GEF 5 onwards, terminal evaluations were available for 89%, with 70% submitted on time. Submission rates vary across agencies. WWF CI, IDB, UNDP, FAO, and World Bank have strong records, while IFAD, AFDB, UNEP, and ADB still have significant room for improvement.
Thank you, Neeraj and Janine. So we usually don't come up with recommendations on the annual performance report. But we felt it's important this time as a reminder that timely evaluation is actually very critical for the GEF partnership to be able to learn, to be able to adapt and improve. And a more responsive evaluation system implies better accountability, better learning, and stronger results. And with that spirit in mind, we developed a recommendation for the first time in the APR, basically to encourage agencies to ensure the prompt submission of terminal evaluations, as well as close existing gaps in evaluations for completed projects. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ajita, Janine, and Neeraj for those presentations. I'd now like to open the floor for any questions and comments. I do note that we're just on an hour behind, so if possible, if you could keep your comments and questions reasonably succinct, that will help us catch up on that time. I'll hand over to Naomi to manage any questions. Thank you.
Many thanks, Richard, and to the IEO presentation. The floor is now open. Okay, so Anders, I will start with you, and then I will continue with Ben. Anders, floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for a very useful report indeed. We will try to be quite brief. We very much welcome the sort of conclusions on increased private sector integration. We welcome recommendations on reviewing implementing organizations where there are some challenges, where sort of there could be space for improving internal processes and mechanism for accountability. We note with concern that only 55% has fulfilled planned co-financing, and in line with the discussions ahead of GEF 9, would be very useful to also use the sort of reflections in the IEO report to see how we can strengthen and reform co-financing, strengthening in terms of number of co-financing and reforming in terms of how it is being presented. Then also we note with concern that 64% of the projects are just likely to be with regard to sustainability, which underlines the needs as we look ahead into GEF 9 to continue to prioritize continuity and sustainability in project planning for the long-term results of the projects, in view of the whole of society approach and sort of collaboration with the private sector and all stakeholders. We note also with concern that there is a lower percentage of projects in the land degradation focal area in Africa and in least developed countries and FCS situations, which are rated in the likely range of sustainability, and in the FCS also to achieve risk of not achieving their intended outcome. So that's also something we need to reflect on in GEF 9 in terms of how we can ensure a strong sustainability of results also in these contexts to preserve the legacy of strong results of the GEF, which we have in GEF 8. Thanks.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much, Anders. I'll now give the floor to Ben, followed by the CSO network. Ben, floor is yours.
Yeah, many thanks, Naomi, and many thanks, Geeta, particularly your colleagues, Neeraj, for your presentation. That was really helpful to see you spreading the work across the IEO. So many thanks for doing that. As mentioned in previous meetings, but I think it's worth just repeating. We totally welcome the quick scan within the document itself. I think it's just emphasizing that it gives us a chance to quickly look at some of the issues. So I mean, please do keep doing that. We welcome the findings of the report and the positive progress in terms of demonstrating a solid track record, and we welcome a detailed focus on behaviour change. And welcome a detailed focus on post-completion reports. And I think just linking into yesterday's session on visibility, I think having, as your video showed, having sort of very clear and visible examples of some of the impact that GEF is having, rather than the numbers we normally focus on, is really useful. I mean, I think important for GEF to be able to demonstrate that, but I think importantly, certainly for us, and being able to tell the story about what GEF is doing in terms of sort of quality examples of projects on the ground, rather than just input numbers, which sometimes don't necessarily land in such a clear way. Obviously, IEO's very strong reputation is very important for demonstrating the quality of such evidence, and I think that's important to show. And obviously, I think you're doing that in this presentation. So, again, linking into Robert's presentation yesterday, I think we're sort of taking on board some of those things in terms of how you present that within GEF's broader work. We also noticed the low percentage of satisfactory outcomes of projects in SIDS and FCAS regions. And I think that's also one of the reasons why it's important to continue to focus on particularly the capacity of those regions. I think we've talked about that before, but I just re-emphasizing that point. I think it was also useful to highlight that, as you did in this presentation and the report, that I think a number of agencies seem to be slow in terms of completing those terminal evaluations, also submitting that on time. I think you particularly highlighted, certainly in the reports, that ADB, IFAD, UNEP and UNIDO were very slow. And I don't know whether you have reasons behind that, or even whether some of the agencies here can explain why those particular agencies are so slow. I particularly noted, for example, that UNEP examples are based on 130 projects. So it's not a question of just isolated projects. And similarly, UNDP's good performance was based on 391. So again, useful to understand some reasons behind that. It was good to see that I think 17% of the projects within that GCF cohort you looked at, I'm not sure if you presented that, it was helpful to see that they're either replicating or scaling up some GEF projects. So again, I think that's a very useful example of what the GEF is achieving in terms of demonstrating some complementarity between GEF and GCF. Again, real tangible examples would be really helpful on that. I'll leave it there in the interest of time, but many thanks to your work on this.
Thank you very much, Ben. I'll now give the floor to the CSO network, followed by Kong. Faisal, yes, floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you very much. GEF CSO network welcomes the IEO annual performance report. We have a longer statement, but I'll summarize to save time. We're very happy to see the steady improvement in performance over time with the various parameters as presented just now. We do, however, see there are some challenges related to broader adoption, with only 60% of completed projects achieving some form of broader adoption, and that is a bit scattered in its form. So the network recognizes the critical role of stakeholder engagement in achieving broader adoption and transformational change envisaged by GEF. However, we're concerned about various challenges which have been flagged in the analysis and elsewhere that need to be addressed if GEF is going to have that broader adoption and long-term sustainability. Some of the key issues we want to highlight here: firstly, challenges in fragile and conflict affected situations. We see this is still a very challenging environment where activities are severely constrained by limited institutional capacity, high staff turnover and inadequate planning. And these undermine the ability of projects to deliver meaningful results. So I think the separate IEO study on this should give some guidance on the way forward. Secondly, capacity constraints in small island development states, both in technical capacity, but also other factors are affecting the project implementation, and that needs to be looked at specifically. Barriers to behavior change, we note the good examples shown about behavior change, but stakeholders often encounter significant barriers such as lack of knowledge, financial resources, and institutional support. Weak regulatory frameworks further reduce motivation for engagement or behavior change. So addressing these barriers is vital to fostering long-term behavioral change and environmental stewardship. We believe in order to secure broader adoption of GEF-supported interventions, we need to look at long-term partnerships. And I think the evidence has shown that where those long-term partnerships, particularly with a local presence, have occurred, then that is leading to contributing to broader adoption. So we urge the GEF to prioritize partnerships with long-term ground-based organizations to enhance stakeholder engagement and impact. Finally, we continue to be concerned about the difference in focus on global environment benefits versus co-benefits or local benefits. We believe, of course, GEF's major objective is to secure global environment benefits, but the challenge to get full adoption, sustainability, and broader adoption is that we also need to look at what we have been calling up to now co-benefits. It is our view that those so-called co-benefits should be considered as core benefits, because if we do not, through the GEF interventions, bring benefit to indigenous people, local community, other key stakeholders, there will be major challenge to sustainability, replication, and broader adoption. So we believe that moving forward, particularly in GEF 9, we really need to look at how to integrate these core benefits or co-benefit to address these key issues and enhance sustainability. Finally, the GEF CSO network calls on the GEF Council, Secretariat, and agencies to take decisive action to address the challenges highlighted by the IEO report. We recommend prioritizing inclusive stakeholder engagement, strengthening institutional capacities, and ensuring that projects are designed to meet the needs and motivations of all stakeholders. Together, we can build a more inclusive and impactful GEF that empowers community and drives sustainable environment change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Faisal. We will now continue with Konkon, followed by Wampi. Konkon, floor is yours.
Thank you, Noemi. We would like to thank the IEO for the report, but we note with concern the weak performance of completed projects in the Africa region on several parameters, including sustainability and realization of co-financing, with only about 55% fully realizing their commitments on co-financing. I would like to hear your views on what can be done to improve our co-financing commitments as we move towards GEF 9. Additionally, the constituency calls on the GEF Secretariat to continue in its efforts to support the strengthening of institutional capacities in the region, to improve sustainability planning, especially financial sustainability of projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I give the floor to Wampi, followed by Andrea. Wampi, floor is yours.
Thank you, Noemi. Also, many thanks for the presentation and report. We can approve the decision. Good to see in the report how the 10 billion dollars of funding is used and what you have learned also during all the activities. For the sake of time, I will concentrate on the co-financing. So the issue of co-financing is something that we find very important. And although there are very good figures, still almost a fifth of the projects achieved less than a half of their pledges with regard to co-financing. So we really think that we have to look into that and see whether maybe the co-financing target should be set more realistically and also really discuss what is co-financing. Coming back also to the discussion of yesterday, see in GEF 9 whether we have the possibility better define the co-financing definitions. I think that is also an important endeavor for the future. But thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you very much. I'll now give the floor to Andrea, followed by Yoko. Andrea, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. We welcome the IEO's annual performance report and we fully support the recommendation. On the performance of completed projects, we're pleased to see the slight improvement over time, We were interested to know why a lower percentage of projects in SIDS and fragile conflict situations have outcome ratings in the satisfactory range. And like others, we want to know what plans are in place to address this. On targeting behavioural change, we note the GEF's approach is evolving through time and that it must be supported by enabling conditions. And we would encourage more emphasis on this area. And finally, we're very pleased that the GEF has improved its activity cycle efficiency in GEF 8, which we consider reflects the efforts of the Secretariat to improve efficiencies in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll continue with Yoko-san, followed by Maher. Yoko, floor is yours.
Thank you, Noemi, and thank you, IEO, for the comprehensive report of the annual performance. I would just like to touch upon the recommendation by the IEO on the evaluation. The terminal evaluations are absolutely necessary in addition to midterm evaluations, and the timely submission of reports is essential in order to measure the results of GEF projects and fulfill accountability to donors. The GEF Secretariat should proactively encourage implementing agencies who are behind the schedule of submission in order to ensure that the reports are submitted on time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now give the floor to Maher, and then we will go online to Ramon, who has requested the floor via Zoom. So Maher, floor is yours.
Thank you, Naomi. Yes, our constituency appreciate the valuable insights presented in the report, and thanks for the IEO for the report. The data-driven analysis is essential for strengthening our collective accountability and improving outcomes across the GEF portfolio. We note with encouragement that over 80% of the projects are rated satisfactory in terms of outcomes, and that the sustainability ratings have continued to improve. However, the continued underperformance in co-financing, realization, and delayed submission of terminal evaluations, particularly among certain agencies, remains a concern. We support the recommendation to strengthen internal mechanism to improve timeless and completeness of terminal evaluations. We also commend the increased focus on behavior changes and border adoption in this year's report. These elements are critical to achieving durable environmental impacts. We encourage future programming to embed behavior change design more systematically, ensuring enabling conditions such as institutional support and access to capital as addressed early. Finally, we understood the importance of adapting monitoring and evaluation frameworks to fragile and capacity-constrained contexts, as it's particularly relevance for many of my constituency's members. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Maher. And now we will go virtually with Ramon, who is joining us on Zoom. Ramon, tienes la palabra.
Gracias, Noemi.
Thank you very much, Noemi. First of all, I would like to thank the OIE, this report. Thank you for the presentation and for being so brief, given how much data you've dealt with and you've included in this presentation. I think it is important to capture the messages you have communicated that will help us make our decisions, especially towards GEF 9. As others have mentioned, the FCAS projects is something that strikes us. It's something that we mentioned yesterday. We see a low percentage of positive or satisfactory results. And we spoke also yesterday about including a higher number of agencies working in these areas. The area of co-finance is also important to us. Anders has mentioned it, and it's, as we mentioned yesterday, it's an area where we need to do better because only 55 or 60% of the results have been achieved or have achieved the co-financing levels that we had set out. This is especially relevant in Africa and those projects with development banks. It is something striking that this is the situation, and I would like to know if there's a reason for that or an explanation that could be given. We see with hope the improvement of projects in the area of international waters and residues. And we also see as positive the projects where GEF and CFG are cooperating. We think, however, that the work should be oriented in a different fashion. We think it would be good to evaluate the complementarity and synergies of the funds. I may be wrong, and I am asking the following question. I think that maybe we should dig deeper when we choose the funds that we cooperate with. We also think that it would be good to include a systematic reference when we work with other green funds or environmental funds, and not only the CIF, the CIF. It would be good if the agencies could complete their final evaluations on time. This is something key so we can do our work. And it would also be important to have the results in a timely fashion. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ramon, for being online with us. I don't see anybody who has requested the floor, so we will go to the next item.
Should we respond to some of the comments? Thank you. I think in earlier APRs, we have responded to the observations about less than optimal performance in fragile and conflict-affected situations, as well as in Africa. It's a lot to, and in SIDS, it's a lot to do with institutional capacity and capability. And we've brought this up in several evaluations. On the point of co-financing, I think we've noted that the actual realized co-financing over time has gotten to higher levels in comparison to the pledged amount. I think that's the quality, and we did a detailed evaluation on co-financing, and it's the quality of co-financing that's really important and that eventually materializes. And I think paying attention to that quality ex ante at the very get-go of the project is really critical. And as you pointed out, I think setting realistic expectations of what's actually feasible in terms of co-financing. To respond to Ramon's comments, yes, definitely, we are looking at the complementarities across funds. We've just begun with looking at what can be scaled up, and how GCF is actually scaling up a significant number of GEF projects, in addition to the synergies across funds, as well as the... So I think there's work going on there, not only at the... I think at the level of the secretariats, but also in evaluation. I'll give you a simple example where GCF said, well, we don't have enough history on projects. And I pointed out that actually they have a 30-year history of rich data coming from the GEF. So they're not starting from scratch. And I think this kind of feeding of our data, which is actually more mature and to the GCF, is important. So I would urge you, when you talk to the GCF, is actually for them to draw on GEF data, which spans so many years. My final comment is, as you pointed out, Ramon, we are sitting on a gold mine. I don't think any other agency has 30 years of environmental outcome data to draw on like the GEF. And so mining this information for lessons, et cetera, is really critical. Thank you. I'll stop.
Thank you. And thanks, Geeta, for the presentation. And again, we discussed some of this in the meeting in Paris, but I think there are just a couple of points that I wanted to bring up. that hopefully will reassure Council of the GEF Secretariat's response and the GEF Partnership's response to some of these issues. The co-financing, I think, is one issue that we will tackle very seriously in the replenishment negotiations. I think there's a need for a major overhaul, and that's where the discussions are going, so I won't address that here. What I wanted to address is this question of sustainability and the satisfactory rating and the difficulty of working in certain country categories. It also should bring in the question of risk and the risk appetite of the GEF and of the Council, because these things are all related. If we want to increase our risk as a portfolio, we have to obviously accept that our satisfactory rating may effectively go down, and that the sustainability overall may also go down, because if you become more innovative and risky, you have to accept a larger portion of your projects which may not succeed, and that will affect other ratings. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I just think we have to be consistent in what we are asking ourselves to do, because you cannot maximize those three. You can't have 100% satisfaction, 100% sustainability, and be extremely risky and innovative. So that's the first point. The second point is that we are, according to the IEO evaluation, we are on par with other organizations and other comparable organizations in terms of sustainability. Now, knowing what we know about our CEO, about myself, about my team, we're not happy by being on par with other organizations. We obviously want to be better. And a lot of the work that we have been doing over the past 10 years, 15 years, in terms of integration, in terms of developing a comprehensive country engagement strategy, with all of the elements in looking at policy coherence, in looking at blended finance. All of these are moving us in the direction, I believe, of being more on a trajectory to have sustainable institutions and sustainable capacities in the countries where we work, which will basically raise the water level for all boats that are working in environmental and development institutions. You can think of sustainability of a particular project. You can create a trust fund that can provide resources for protected area management, and that will create a level of sustainability that is specific for that particular project. And as long as you have resources, then the protected areas will be financed. But if you don't have the institutions and the people and the capacity and the dynamics of the government to work concertedly in a particular direction, that money disappears and the sustainability disappears. But if you have the institutions, you can actually survive. And one example, without singling out any country in particular, our Amazon Sustainable Landscapes program over the past decade has survived many different governments in Latin America and South America. Certain governments of the Amazon basin were more prone to collaborating. In other instances, they were less prone. And during those times where the governments were less prone to collaborating, the institutions that were in place, that were collaborating at the state level, at the municipal level, and at the international level, were capable of sustaining those difficult times, so that when changes in government appeared to be more sustainable and more favorable, there was barely a hiccup in the actual implementation of the goal of the Amazon Sustainable Landscapes. And so that really is something that we are aiming to achieve. Now, some of these elements are long-term. When you invest in people, it could take 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The investments that we're making today in training the new generation of young conservationists through the Fonseca Fellowship is something that will start to appear in 10 or 20 years. But these are elements of sustainability that we believe are much more fundamental and can lead to true sustainability and environment. We're going to start to invest in creating steering committees or incentivizing countries to create steering committees for GEF investments at the government level. We're hopefully going to be able to work with countries to develop country platforms. All of these bring together much more coherence at the government level to couch the GEF investments within the other development and environmental investments that are being done, and we believe start to really build that sustainability. And just one last example, one of our agencies, Funbio, was created 25 years ago with the help of GEF funds. Today, it is a totally sustainable institution in Brazil. The GEF funding that it has is actually minimal to its entire portfolio, yet it is an institution that actually creates that sustainable platform for the government as a partner and for civil society. So these are investments. I don't want to say we shouldn't be looking at individual projects, but these are all things that are the fundamental, I think, if we are looking long-term at creating individual countries and the institutions and people that will carry the GEF resources and the GEF investments in the long term.
Okay, we don't see any other interventions, so I'd like to thank everyone for their comments and questions, and I especially want to thank you for keeping them brief so we can make up a bit of time. And of course to Geeta, Janine and Niraj and Claude for your comments. On that, I'm inviting the Council to adopt the draft decision in GEF/E/C69/01 for agreement. Agreed. Thank you. So we'll now move on to the next agenda item. In the interest of time, what we're going to do is combine agenda items 9, 10 and 11, which is the evaluation of international waters focal area, socioeconomic co-benefits of GEF-funded interventions, and GEF support for nature-based solutions and management responses. So what we propose to do is to present each of the evaluations and the management responses in succession with any comments and views of Council to follow. On that, I'll hand over to Geeta to present the first evaluation of international waters focal area. Over to you, Geeta.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Stefan, are you calling?
Okay. So we will now present the IO evaluations of GEF interventions in the international waters focal area. I'm joined by my colleague, Mitsuaki Hirai. He literally joined us a year ago on the donor-funded staffing program from Japan. Thank you, Japan. And literally dived deep into the international waters evaluation. It's been 4 years since we last did the study on international waters. Over to you, Mitsuaki.
Thank you, Geeta, and good afternoon. This evaluation examined how the international waters focal area has adapted its strategy in response to GEF's increasing emphasis on integrated programming. We specifically assessed integration and resource allocation, sustainability planning, and project performance and impacts, among others. The evaluation covers 277 projects across more than 140 countries from GEF 5 to GEF 8, representing $1.7 billion in grants and nearly $17 billion in expected co-financing. UNDP manages the largest portfolio and share of GEF grants at 28%. Regionally, Asia and Africa account for the highest number of projects and grant allocations. IW interventions have been highly relevant to national, regional, and global priorities. While the balance between marine and freshwater projects has improved, there are some opportunities for further improvement, particularly in dedicated groundwater projects and coverage of high-risk transboundary water bodies. From GEF 5 to GEF 8, IW projects most commonly addressed pollution reduction and sustainable fisheries. The majority of completed projects applied integrated approaches such as integrated water resources management and integrated coastal management. A new area of work is supporting country ratification and early implementation of the BBNJ agreement. The IW portfolio underwent a notable shift or expansion from GEF 7 to GEF 8, marked by a rise in multifocal area projects and child projects within integrated programs. While this presented opportunities to generate multiple environmental benefits, it could dilute the core focus on transboundary cooperation. The IW portfolio has performed well, with 86% of projects achieving satisfactory outcome ratings. Moreover, 73% of IW projects were rated likely sustainable, being significantly higher than the GEF overall average of 62%. IW projects also performed well in M&E implementation and execution. Project sustainability is absolutely key to transboundary water management. However, we found that many projects delay this planning until late in the implementation period. IW stakeholders also perceived the importance of developing detailed sustainability plans at project outset. IW projects have catalyzed sustained action beyond GEF funding. For instance, the GLOW-MEEP project promoted energy-efficient shipping through a public-private partnership, Global Industry Alliance, which was later continued by IMO and Norway through Green Voyage 2050. IW projects also have generated socio-economic benefits, such as increased employment and learning opportunities for women. For example, in the Nile Basin project, women in the DRC and Uganda received training on alternative livelihoods, such as soap making, small-scale livestock rearing, and agriculture. These initiatives were designed to help diversify their sources of income beyond reliance on fisheries, while promoting economic resilience and empowerment within local communities. The IW focal area also continued to demonstrate strengths in knowledge management by disseminating the impacts, successful practices, and key lessons of IW projects. The most recent IW conference in Uruguay provided a platform for IW stakeholders to have candid exchanges on what is working well and what issues remain. Many knowledge products were also developed from GEF 5 to GEF 8. An experience note, for example, highlighted how regional dialogues led to the successful development of regional guidelines on transboundary water management in Central America. IW Learn helped disseminate lessons leading to the adoption of new management approaches in 47 projects during its fourth phase. We also noted one area for further improvement. Communication and knowledge sharing among child projects in Reach to Reef and Common Oceans programs were relatively limited. Such knowledge management activities are important to foster programmatic synergy. IW projects also use some innovative technologies. A Yellow Sea LME project used integrated multi-trophic aquaculture to boost aquaculture productivity and reduce pollution. Knowledge from this project was later shared with the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism through a learning exchange facilitated by IW Learn. Another project in Pacific Seas used inundation modeling to facilitate scenario-based planning to manage coastal aquifers. The IW focal area has promoted regional coherence for transboundary water management through the TDSUP approach and other integrated approaches, such as source to sea, integrated water resources management, and marine spatial planning. We found that IW investments contributed to addressing the nexus of water, energy, food, and ecosystem in Georgia and Azerbaijan. Based on such contributions, Georgia passed a new water law in 2023, and Azerbaijan established a new state water resources agency promoting multi-sectoral approaches to water resource management. Gender inclusion and mainstreaming has been a consistent strength in the IW focal area. For example, in the Green River Basin projects, women comprised about 30% of the decision-making body, the Green Core Group, and 60% of the expert working group members. At IWC 10 in Uruguay, we also had constructive exchanges with IW stakeholders and identified a common theme that private sector engagement was widely recognized as a key area for improvement.
So just so you know, this is an evaluation. So you've heard a lot of the positives and what's working well in IW, but there are clearly some challenges in this focal area as well. First, the current core indicators don't really capture the full picture, especially when it comes to transboundary impacts, which the GEF has been working on for a while, as well as on socioeconomic benefits. And that makes it really difficult to understand the full value that IW projects bring. Secondly, in many cases, sustainability and exit plans came in a little too late. And starting those conversations a little earlier would help that the results, we just talked a lot about sustainability, and this would actually help ensure that the results last beyond project closure. Third, we've seen some tension between the need to move quickly in light of being more efficient, especially during project preparation, as well as the need for stronger stakeholder engagement and country ownership. Finding the right balance is key here. And finally, as mentioned earlier, there's been some limited knowledge sharing, particularly across projects within programs. That could be a missed opportunity if it's not exploited fully, because there's a lot of learning that could happen across projects. So based on these findings and conclusions, we developed 3 recommendations, which we discussed with the GEF Secretariat. So the first one is assess and balance the investments between standalone IW projects and multifocal area or programs to ensure that the core mandate of transboundary cooperation remains central. That was our first recommendation. The second recommendation is to support stakeholder training on innovative financing models. We heard about biofin and biodiversity, but also in the case of IW, this came out a lot in the IWC 10 conference, on how to develop innovative financing models and promote the development of comprehensive sustainability plans early on in the project cycle. And our third recommendation is to refine the IW indicators to systematically capture the effectiveness of transboundary cooperation. And this could mean a lot of process indicators as well, because there's a lot of process that goes on in transboundary cooperation. Assess socioeconomic benefits, and you'll hear more about that in our next evaluation, and impacts on targeted water resources. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you both, Geeta and Mitsuaki. I think that's a very timely evaluation, especially with BB&J coming into the GEF family. I'll now invite Mr. Andrew Hume to come forward to introduce document GEF/C69/07 management response on the evaluation of international waters focal area. Andrew.
Great. Thank you, Co-Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. The GEF Secretariat welcomes the IEO's evaluation of the international waters focal area. GEF Secretariat is encouraged that the evaluation highlights the continued critical role of the IW focal area in promoting cooperation among countries for the conservation and sustainable management of transboundary freshwater and marine ecosystems and natural resources. The evaluation contains 3 recommendations, and the GEF Secretariat agrees with all 3. The first recommendation suggests the GEF Secretariat should continue to carefully assess all new IW-supported projects to ensure its core mandate of transboundary cooperation remains central to all investments. We agree with this recommendation. Given the close connection between IW focal area objectives and other GEF focal areas, the IW focal area has always played an important role of promoting integrated programming across many GEF investments. The GEF Secretariat is committed to continuing its ongoing assessment to ensure IW focal area objectives remain central to all IW objectives, including in multi-focal area and multi-trust fund projects, programmatic approaches, and integrated programs. The second recommendation suggests the GEF Secretariat should support stakeholder training on innovative financial models and promote the development of comprehensive sustainability plans early in the project cycle to enhance the financial sustainability of IW projects. We agree with this recommendation and are already making steps towards implementing it, including through several GEF 7 and GEF 8 IW projects and multiple workshops on long-term project financial sustainability through our knowledge and learning exchange platform, IW Learn. We will also strengthen these efforts in GEF 9 with increased attention on blended finance, enhanced stakeholder training through IW Learn, and capacity building as part of the new country engagement strategy. The third recommendation suggests the GEF Secretariat should establish guidance for agencies and national partners to enhance monitoring the effectiveness of transboundary cooperation arrangements and relevant socioeconomic co-benefits. We agree with this recommendation. The current GEF 8 results management framework provides a solid foundation for measuring progress and strengthening governance in transboundary water management. The IW focal area is enhancing its results measurement, including through GEF 8 projects and in GEF 9 with IW Learn. This will fall under related efforts by the GEF Secretariat to improve its results architecture related to the IEO evaluation on social economic co-benefits of GEF-funded interventions, as presented at this GEF Council meeting. In conclusion, we would like to recognize the valuable insights provided by the IEO's evaluation of the IW focal area. The GEF Secretariat is committed to continuous improvement and will address the IEO's recommendations to further enhance the effectiveness of the IW focal area. We will track progress on the implementation of these recommendations through the IEO's Standard Management Action Record. And with that, I thank you and hand it back over to the co-chair.
Thank you, Andrew, for that presentation of the management response. As I indicated earlier, we'll flow through now the other evaluations. And on that note, I'll hand over to Gita from the GEF IEO to introduce document GEF/E/C69/03, the evaluation of the socioeconomic co-benefits of GEF-funded interventions. Sorry.
Sorry, Richard. I just wanted to find a final remark on my side on this report. Thank you so much, Gita and Claude and Andrew. Without any doubt, this program is one of the most relevant and strategic programs that the GEF does has. Next week we will be having a World Summit on Oceans, and definitely the contribution to the GEF to the multiple processes in multiple forms on the ocean is as critical and important. I was a month ago in Panama with the Minister of Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, and Ecuador, where two things were extremely important and revealing to me. One is that these 4 countries in COP26 in Glasgow, with their heads of state in the GEF Pavilion, committed to protect 30% of the ocean before 2030. was in COP26. In a matter of a couple of years, the 4 countries, against all odds and against all economic interests, were able to succeed in complying with the commitments of their heads of state. And even though in the 4 cases, government changed it, they kept on what was committed by the presidents. And we were supporting the creation of the largest marine protected area on planet Earth. A month ago, and of course, that commitment to protect 30% in Glasgow brought the attention of many potential donors, particularly philanthropic organizations. And there were a couple of meetings from philanthropic organizations where they commit to mobilize $30 million 2 years ago. Today, the only organization, the only multilateral organization that has been able to really provide funding at scale is the GEF to the international waters. Countries are still waiting for the philanthropic organizations to comply with their commitment. And I want to publicly express my gratitude to Andrew and his team for being speed, fast, agile, and being able to provide financial support to those countries who didn't hesitate to assume the political cost of protecting 30% of their oceans. The GEF has, and this is my point, has the fingerprints all over the complex of marine protected areas, the biggest complex of protected areas in planet Earth, 64 million hectares. My gratitude also to the governments of Costa Rica and France, who has been extremely active, in the UK, extremely active through the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People that has complemented what the GEF has done. And I want to publicly recognize the achievement of the International Waters Team, the vision and commitment of these 4 countries, and just indeed what this council agreed to support a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago, this council approved these PIF, International Waters, and a month ago I was there with the ministers, and I was really delighted to see that the GEF is changing the mind of many stakeholders, particularly from the public sector, that tend to believe that the monies are located in the philanthropic sector and that the philanthropic organizations are faster than any other organization. And, well, evidence proves the contrary. So thank you so much, Andrew and the GEF Secretariat. Thank you so much to the Council. And what's more, this Council took a decision, and here's where the visibility and communication is extremely important. On everyone's sides, we took the decision to provide strategic funding, $16 million, to the largest complex of protected areas, and we're going to Nice, and nobody knows what the GEF did. And well, Andrew has a very clear mandate, and the communication team has a very clear mandate to make this extremely visible. The GEF, this council, is the largest provider of financial support for global marine conservation, and this is just one good example of the many other things that the GEF is doing. The work of the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People has been instrumental in aligning 120 countries with the Earth 30 per 30, and the GEF is the organization, or one of the organizations, that is providing the strategic funding. So many thanks for that. Now, these countries, who once more has 64 million hectares, let me give a little bit of perspective. The size of terrestrial Costa Rica is 10 million hectares. And here we're talking about 64 million hectares of one of the most important relevant marine ecosystems in the world, which is the tropical Eastern Pacific. Now the countries are looking to do the next big move, and it is related to BBNJ. Since now this country has 30% of their EC under an MMSP, under some kind of management of protected areas, now they are thinking to really be the first group of countries that are going to implement actions related to BBNJ, and BBNJ establishes the possibilities to create marine protected areas in the high seas. So it is like a domino effect, but we've been promoting or triggering, and I just wanted to give this perspective. The nature of the international waters, which is first come, first served, is a very interesting mechanism that that promotes competition and competitiveness within recipient countries, and that is all the element which is extremely important. Of course, we try to generate multiple balances across the multiple regions on how we allocate the resources, but this nature is extremely interesting so countries can bring their best ideas and we can help them realize those ideas. Thank you so much, Co-Chair. Over to you.
Thank you, Carlos Manuel. It certainly does connect a range of points that we're discussing at this meeting, plus also the replenishment that are really important for the GEF. I'll now hand back over to Gita for the evaluation of socioeconomic co-benefits of GEF-funded interventions. Over to you, Gita.
Thank you, Chair. Before I let Fabrizio get into the presentation, I have to say something because I was really excited about starting this evaluation 2 years ago. For the first time, the IEO or any agency actually has assessed the co-benefits alongside environmental benefits. And in the absence of data, it was not really easy to do, right? We got geospatial data on environmental outcomes, but we didn't have socioeconomic information, collected through GEF projects, et cetera, or it was very sporadic. We dived into the LSMS surveys conducted by the World Bank. We looked at health surveys conducted by different country statistical agencies. We combined geospatial data with this data. That's why it took time. I have to thank my colleague Anupam Anand, who leads all our geospatial work. If you've seen all the graphics, et cetera, for the last 12 years, it's been his hard work, as well as the photography. And then Fabrizio joined last year, and he deep dived into the country case studies on this evaluation. So with that, this is really state of the art. And since we like to push on technological and methodological innovation, this evaluation is one demonstration of that. Thank you. So hand over to you, Fabrizio.
Thank you for the floor, and good afternoon, distinguished members of the Council. So many may be familiar with the definition of socioeconomic co-benefits, but just for clarity, they can be seen as positive effects and impacts beyond the environmental goals of the project. For example, a GEF-funded project. So example could be improvements in livelihoods, health, employment, gender equality, and others. So this evaluation looked at the evolution of the concept and conceptualization of co-benefits in GEF-funded projects, look at evidence on achievements of co-benefits, factors affecting sustainability, and operational arrangements that can support or challenge co-benefits. So it was a mixed method evaluation. We started with a desk review of the documentation, and as our director explained, we also had an important part of the geospatial analysis combined with socioeconomic surveys. And that involved 11 countries and over 100 projects funded by GEF. And also we had country case studies as a validation. As it has been said, it was new approach and also experimental, so we had a lot to learn from this. We use satellite data, and we could find proxies for local economic dynamism. We had at some point to match this satellite data with surveys. Typically, the project did not have surveys, so I had to look at, as it was said, surveys generated by other cooperation agencies or programs. And then it was very important to ground truth these findings, so that's why we conducted 3 country case studies, and the field visits and the country case studies were selected in order to validate some hypotheses that were coming from the previous analysis. So we can look at, first of all, the relevance of a project design. So important to distinguish between 2 categories of project that we looked at. They were not all the same. There were projects that had an entry point on natural resource protection, where the socioeconomic benefits would come as a consequence, as an effect of this protection. This was typically the case of projects under the responsibilities of NGOs and UN agencies. Typically, not always, but in most cases, this was the situation. And then we had projects instead that had an entry point of local development, rural development, with environmental components financed by GEF. And these were projects typically under the responsibilities of international financial institutions. One of the findings was, and we had a long longitudinal analysis to look at, was the gain of interest in GEF-funded project for socioeconomic co-benefits. We looked at it through extensive document review. We looked at interviews, but one of the very simple things we did at the very beginning was to do text analysis and count how many times we could find reference to the co-benefits. This is represented here. You can see under GEF 4, you have barely a few references, and later from GEF 5, you have many more references. So increased interest, but also some limitations, because the pathways to generate co-benefits was not always clear in the project design. So the type of initiatives that are required to generate co-benefits were not always well defined in the design. And sometimes conservation projects can also have detrimental effects. For example, reduce access to a forest, to a fishery. This was not always well analyzed in the project design, and so the measures to compensate for this were also not always well studied in the design. Moving to the effectiveness, so the combining satellite data and surveys gave us a sort of broad view of what would happen in this over 100 projects in 11 countries. So the finding was quite encouraging because we found positive correlation between the presence of a GEF-funded project and a household welfare indicator. So, for example, income or assets. And we could compare with and without, before and after. So it was quite an encouraging results to start with. But then, through the country case studies, we could say we looked at the microscope and more detailed elements. For example, one of the socioeconomic benefits was human capital development, human capital, what people know. So we could find that people were acquiring or improving their skills, soil management, water management, crop management. In some cases where, for example, benefiting from meteorological stations that provided data that were fed back to the community, so people had a better idea, fact-based, on what climate change was provoking and how to adapt, for example, the cropping patterns to the climate change. And we had also some examples, here we quote in Mexico, but not only Mexico, of combining traditional approach to natural resource conservation and using IT applications, computer science, thanks to the collaboration with universities. So traditional, modern, contemporary knowledge to manage resources. Communities have typically managed natural resources for centuries. We have not invented this with GEF and the project, but the project have strengthened the community bonds and also the way in which the governance works at the community level. For example, more young people participate now in assemblies, more women participate in assemblies on managing natural resources. Sorry, we are at the previous slide. And then also what happened was that the project helped create connection with external programs, even with universities and research centers. And this created a sort of a more favorable environment to create socioeconomic benefits and to maintain socioeconomic benefits. Looking at the economic benefits, some of them had to do with increased agricultural productivity because of land restoration and soil fertility restoration. There were also examples of conservation of resources that lead to using timber and non-timber forest projects in a sustainable manner. Ecotourism was another example to diversify the income basis in a community. And we also had cases in which the project were creating an enabling environment for further investment, but again, then more investment need to be brought in, and that was not always the case. There were also likely health and nutrition co-benefits, but these were under-documented. So very little studies showing what this type of co-benefits were and to extent they were and how important they were. And also, to be complete, some case of unintended drawbacks, so negative benefits or detrimental effects, for example, reduced farm income or human-wildlife conflicts, for example, in Nepal. Now, we would like, of course, socioeconomic co-benefits to be sustained, and that's why sustainability is so important. Certainly, the motivation and enthusiasm and commitment from communities was a very important factor for future sustainability, positive factor. But we found also some challenges. One of them was the short project duration, and typically the co-benefit would appear at the end of the project cycle. And there was not always a strategy to sustain the co-benefits. Another limitation was that in principle, there were excellent opportunities for projects to support each other, GEF-funded project, but also project funded by other external cooperation. This was not always happening. There was not always a clear coordination arrangement between the national partners, the GEF agencies, and other national agencies on who is responsible for doing this. So how do you really orchestrate this coordination and synergy between projects? So that was not always available. To conclude, the evidence on socioeconomic benefits was ample and quite strong and quite clear. The attention at the design was a key enabler. During implementation, engaging communities and local institutions was absolutely critical, and sustaining co-benefits requires a consolidation strategy, which needs to be there, possibly from the very beginning, and then worked out during implementation. And it's very important to track the co-benefits to capture a full range of project results when in a GEF-funded project, not just environmental benefits, but the full range of effects, and also to support the sustainability. Now, we conclude with 3 recommendations. First of all, first recommendation, to be precise and define and design the pathways to generate the co-benefits and identify from the beginning the risks and mitigation measures, as in the case of detrimental effect. Second, strengthen the country portfolio coordination to promote sustainability and scaling up of co-benefits. This needs a concerted efforts by actors. Third, track the co-benefits during project implementation and at completion, not just to document results, which is important, but also to devise strategies to sustain co-benefits in the long term. Thank you, and we are available to answer questions, if any.
Thank you, Gita and Fabrizio, for that presenting the document. I'll now hand over to Jonathan Caldecott from the GEF Secretariat to provide the management response on the evaluation. Over to you, Jonathan.
Great. Thank you very much, Co-Chair, Council members. Let me begin by first expressing the GEF Secretariat's appreciation for the Independent Evaluation Office for this constructive and quite timely evaluation on the socioeconomic co-benefits of GEF-financed interventions. So we welcome the report's recognition that socioeconomic co-benefits are not peripheral to sustainable environmental results. These benefits, such as improved livelihoods, strengthened capacity, or greater social inclusion, often accompany and help reinforce environmental outcomes, which are what the GEF is all about, and then contribute to the effectiveness and long-term sustainability of what the GEF seeks to achieve. We are particularly encouraged by the evidence of a growing focus on these outcomes since GEF 5. And the affirmation that GEF projects are increasingly designed with co-benefits in mind. The evaluation findings are, we think, well aligned with our long-term vision for a healthy planet, healthy people, and will directly inform the work that we're currently doing and will begin doing on the GEF 9 results measurement framework. Across the GEF family of funds, we're also committed to better reflecting a whole of society approach in both performance and measurement, ensuring that people and communities at the center of environmental action are also the beneficiaries. So let me just briefly speak to the 3 recommendations to which we all agree. First, on defining pathways to socioeconomic co-benefits during project design. The current guidance already encourages the articulation of such co-benefits and mandates tracking of that by way of the monitoring and evaluation plans. But we do see further opportunity here. We will refine the project review process in advance of GEF 9 to place greater emphasis on co-benefits, and we'll continue to require certification that these are integrated in project design and that they're adequately monitored. The GEF safeguards policy also further ensures that potential adverse impacts are proactively addressed and mitigated at that stage. Second, on promoting sustainability through stronger country portfolio coordination, under the GEF 8 country engagement strategy, and looking ahead to GEF 9 on that, colleagues from across the Secretariat, you've heard from us about how we are going to be further empowering operational focal points to take on a more strategic role through new initiatives on training and portfolio oversight. We're aiming to equip OFPs to convene annual portfolio reviews, to align GEF-funded interventions more closely with national priorities, strengthen ownership and sustainability of results, and that includes socioeconomic gains. Third, on improving the tracking of co-benefits during implementation and at project completion. This is also an important area of work for us as we develop the GEF 9 RMF, the results measurement framework. We're exploring how to make co-benefits more visible through disaggregated indicators, a focused set of standard metrics, and potentially through innovative tools such as geospatial data overlays, as Fabrizio mentioned. These steps, we think, will enhance consistency and comparability while allowing space for country and context-specific measures. So, Chair, just to conclude, we very much welcome the validation of the work that we've been doing in this area, the work that we've done in this area, and we appreciate the helpful steer from IEO on what more we can do. We're committed to translating these recommendations into action, and we'll track progress through the usual method, through the IEO's management action record. This momentum will also be carried into the GEF 9 replenishment process, where we look forward to further strengthening our collective impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan, for presenting that management response. We'll now move on to the third and last evaluation, and I invite Geeta from the IEO to introduce document GEF/E/C69/04, the evaluation of the GEF support for nature-based solutions. Over to you, Geeta.
Thank you, Chair, again. And we're going to adopt a different format for this one, so you're going to stay tuned and enjoy the show. But I wanted to say that this is our first evaluation on nature-based solutions. And given the number of definitions floating around there and different misinterpretations, we adopted the internationally recognized definition from the UN Environmental Assembly and the IUCN to assess GEF's support for NBS. Now, GEF support for nature-based solutions is not new, right? It's evolved ever since probably GEF 6. It's recognized as a cross-cutting issue and in fact proposes there's a strategy in GEF 9 to actually put a strong emphasis on nature-based solutions in the programming directions coming up. So this evaluation was led by Dr. Anupam Anand, who has spearheaded our geospatial work for the last 12 years. We were the first evaluation team to ever do geospatial work across the multilaterals and UN agencies. So he not only guided the analytical work, but also captured powerful imagery, being our professional photographer of the unit. And the birds you saw at the beginning were his. But the visuals and the findings were then skillfully shaped into a compelling video by Jimmy Sylvester, our knowledge and communications officer, who brought the story to life through editing, narrative, and design. So their collaboration has helped turn the evidence into a product that I hope you will find, as I did, insightful and engaging. So please watch the show.
Nature-based solutions, or NBS, are reshaping how we address the planet's most pressing challenges, from climate change and biodiversity loss to food and water insecurity. By working with nature, these solutions restore ecosystems and strengthen resilience, cost-effectively and sustainably. Nature-based solutions are central to the Global Environment Facility's mission. This first evaluation by the GEF Independent Evaluation Office examined a broad portfolio of NBS projects implemented across 4 GEF funding cycles, highlighting their results, strategic relevance, and overall performance. The evaluation found that GEF-supported NBS projects are delivering results. In Nepal, reforestation efforts are reversing forest loss and building climate resilience while supporting local communities.
When soil erode, they sediment that side, and we have planted some bamboos because of fertile soil. The bamboo will grow, and we can say this is the nature-based solution, and nature is the best solution.
In India, climate-smart agriculture is improving food security while conserving soil and water, thanks to strong local engagement and inclusive practices.
The Mizo people in this whole forest landscape have an inherited way of living with nature. So we are trying to also build up their livelihood with low volume, high value products, which are nature-based solutions.
In Mexico, sustainable land use and reforestation are bringing ecosystems back to life, restoring nature and supporting rural livelihoods for agave farmers.
Reforestación va en la base de un árbol atrae sombra. ¿La sombra qué es? Agua. Sirve que no evapore el sol muy rápido el agua. Eso que lo controle más, hay más nacimientos, atrae más fauna, más tipos de animales que a lo mejor no han habido, lo atraen, el animal viene y todo, hace su abono, nos sirve de abono para el maguey, nos ayuda en todas maneras.
In the Philippines, sustainable land management has restored degraded hillsides, reduced landslide risks near key roads, and boosted biodiversity and incomes.
Nalibay sa kumanggay ng kuan ba na anay abot akong gipang tanom, nakapuls na ko, nakapag-aral na ako ng anak ko. Yung ano na income ng saging sa kaya rambutan yung pakatapos.
NBS projects also advance global commitments like the Paris Agreement and SDGs. Some are now piloting innovative finance models, offering new pathways to scale nature-based solutions through blended capital and long-term sustainability strategies. The evaluation also found that projects that align with national policies and include women and indigenous communities are achieving better outcomes and gaining stronger government support. But challenges remain. NBS are still underused in the GEF portfolio. The lack of operational definitions and tagging limits coherence. Some stakeholders question their cost effectiveness compared to traditional infrastructure. Weak coordination, overlapping mandates, and political disruptions also limit impact. Many projects struggle with follow-up funding, local governance, and private investment, where short-term returns often take priority over long-term resilience. Nature-based solutions are working, but to scale what works, we need clearer strategies, stronger institutions, and sustained investment. As the world faces converging crises, NBS offer a vital bridge between environmental goals and human well-being.
Thank you. So we came down from 80-page reports to 20 minutes.
Hemos pasado de un informe de 80 páginas a un vídeo de 3 semanas, de 3 minutos en las evaluaciones. Esto no es algo que podamos hacer cada vez debido al coste y los viajes, etcétera. Pero vamos a intentar hacer esto. para una de las evaluaciones en cada reunión del Consejo. Tenemos recomendaciones basadas en nuestras conclusiones. Gracias, Gita. Tenemos 4 recomendaciones. La primera, el desarrollar unas pautas para el seguimiento de la integración y la gestión de la financiación. El segundo es el aumentar la participación del sector privado en la financiación combinada y mejorar la capacidad y a través del apoyo de los países, además de mejorar o fortalecer las muestras, las pruebas, los resultados de las soluciones basadas en la naturaleza. Gracias, señor presidente. Estupendo. Muchísimas gracias, Gita. Y muchas gracias, Jimmy, por esa presentación tan fantástica que he apreciado sobremanera el nuevo formato que me resulta muy informativo. Ahora le voy a dar la palabra a Yugus para que presente el documento GEF 69 respecto a la respuesta a la evaluación del apoyo a las soluciones basadas en la naturaleza. Muchísimas gracias, señor presidente. Gracias, Sangallo, por la presentación y por el vídeo tan inspirador. La Secretaría del GEF acoge con beneplácito la evaluación de la oficina. Si bien es cierto que el concepto de soluciones basadas en la naturaleza es algo nuevo, nos complace el que se tenga en cuenta la gran historia del GEF, que beneficia tanto a las personas como al medio ambiente. En virtud de la evaluación, esto supone un 30% del portafolio de la cartera del GEF, y esto demuestra que, de hecho, las soluciones basadas en la naturaleza son parte clave de la misión del GEF. Nos alienta el hecho de que el GEF apoye las soluciones basadas
development challenges at scale. The evaluation includes 4 recommendations, and the GEF Secretariat broadly agrees with all of them. The Secretariat partially agrees with recommendation 1 related to the development of guidance on nature-based solutions. We see merits in developing guidance that clarifies entry points for effective integration of nature-based solutions in programming and that fosters greater coherence in the use of terms and approaches across the GEF. Such guidance on nature-based solution will be incorporated within the GEF 9 programming directions, currently under discussion by replenishment participants. This will ensure that guidance is fully embedded within GEF programming as requested in the recommendation. However, the added value of a GEF-wide theory of change on nature-based solution is unclear to us. The GEF Secretariat rather suggests providing guidance on project-level theory of change. The GEF Secretariat agrees with recommendation 2. We agree with the opportunity and need to scale private sector investment in nature-based solution through blended finance. It is in line with the draft GEF 9 programming directions for the GEF Trust Fund, the LDCF, and the SCCF, which all propose to increase and mainstream blended finance throughout the GEF family of funds. The GEF Secretariat also agrees with recommendation 3 related to capacity building in country. We view this recommendation as an encouragement to pursue ongoing efforts to build capacity and promote learning through the country engagement strategy, the GEF strategy for knowledge management and learning, and GEF programming itself. The coordination platforms of the GEF 8 integrated programs will notably play a key role in supporting countries to implement nature-based solutions. Finally, the GEF Secretariat agrees with recommendation 4 related to the evidence based on cost effectiveness and co-benefits of nature-based solutions. The GEF Secretariat is committed to improving the measurement of socio-economic co-benefits across the portfolio, as was just presented by Jonathan earlier on. We'll explore ways to more clearly capture and communicate the socio-economic co-benefits of nature-based solution in the forthcoming GEF 9 results measurement framework, particularly as they relate to indigenous peoples and local communities. In conclusion, The evaluation's findings and recommendations are well aligned with ongoing efforts. This is thanks to the explicit introduction in the GEF 8 programming direction and in the GEF 8 strategic positioning of nature-based solution as a cross-cutting priority. And the Secretariat will respond to the recommendations warranting further development through GEF 9 strategies. This will be done with a view to even more strategically harness nature-based solution to deliver on the GEF's mandate. With that, I thank you and turn it back to the co-chair.
Thank you. I guess you don't have any comments. On that marathon effort of the 3 evaluations and the responses, which I appreciate, I'd like to open the floor to for comments and questions. Thank you.
Many thanks, Richard. We have already some people requesting the floor, starting with Anil, followed by Regina. Anil, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Naomi. Thanks for waking all of us up, Geeta, with this good presentation and winding it up with the video. Excellent job by the IEO. I really have my appreciation for that, and good findings and good recommendations too, which we support in all the recommendations across the international waters, your NBS socioeconomic benefits. I just have one small correction to the previous speaker on natural-based solution. It's not a new phenomenon. I'm sorry. It has always existed. It will exist and it will continue to exist. It is more of the external people who came and changed it, and we are given a new name tag. The local people, they know that. That's why you're talking as local knowledge. So let's not term that as a new phenomena. It has existed down centuries. So let's not get into that phase of giving that declaration for that. Yeah. So coming back, I only have just 2 comments. And one is that while GEF financing projects and developing indicators on transboundary water management and other such investments that fall within the classification and definition of transboundary projects, they should respect and comply and adhere to the boundaries of engagement within the bilateral agreements and other such agreements which is enforced from time to time between countries or between 2 countries or more than that, or the region. So that's one request of mine. And the other one is the suggestion for the sustainability framework and commitments. I found that there were some recommendations which was there in the last one that we'll have to put in the indicators. I would say that based on my work experience on the ground, starting at the project preparation, you give an outline and a framework for that. And around midterm, by the time you already have the experience, you have the lessons also learned to a large extent, enhance that framework and the commitment to what are the operational and maintenance details and the strategy, and include that in the strategy for scaling up to a higher levels. So that will be my suggestion there if you are to look in for the sustainability of the intervention. Maybe many of your projects is already doing as a default, but it'll be good if we can standardize it and give some sort of a guidance across as they move forward, because the upfront, when you're clearing a project, a commitment was the ownership and responsibility of the national governments to see if this succeeds. I'm sure out of 100, maybe only 80% succeeds or even 60% succeed, but whatever success is there for scaling up, midterm review will be the time to look into it and develop the framework and the roadmap ahead of how to go with it when GEF funds winds up. With that, I close and thank you once again. Thanks, IEO.
Many thanks, Anil. I'll now give the floor to Regina, followed by André. Regina, tienes la palabra.
Gracias, Noemi. Thank you. We'd like to make a statement on the socioeconomic benefits. The constituency acknowledges the importance of monitoring socioeconomic benefits in GEF projects. We recognize that achieving environmental objectives while simultaneously delivering social and economic gains is fundamental for sustainable development. We extend our gratitude to the Independent Evaluation Office for the visit conducted to several projects within Mexico's portfolio during January of this year. This meeting provided an invaluable opportunity for both implementing and executing agencies to engage with the IEO team, as well as to share the challenges and achievements related to project implementation across Mexican territory. Moreover, this evaluation clearly establishes an initial milestone to advance the development of new mechanisms and indicators aimed at measuring the social and economic co-benefits generated by GEF projects. Additionally, this initiative aligns closely with the sustainable development policy upheld by the Ministry of Finance and Public Credit in Mexico, which mandates that all investments and projects within the country must simultaneously benefit the population while safeguarding our natural resources. Additionally, in Mexico, we have engaged in the review process of GEF projects, providing feedback and recommendations to better capture these socioeconomic outcomes. However, we often receive feedback from implementing agencies and actors indicating that monitoring socioeconomic benefits is not yet mandatory under current GEF requirements. Therefore, the constituency believes it would be beneficial to develop specific guidance on monitoring socioeconomic benefits. Establishing a set of standardized indicators would not only ensure consistent tracking, but also provide valuable insights into how projects are benefiting local communities. We suggest that as part of GEF 9, the Council consider implementing standardized indicators for socioeconomic co-benefits. We believe that by including these indicators, the GEF would strengthen its capacity to generate evidence on how projects are contributing to sustainable livelihoods and social well-being, ultimately reinforcing the environmental impact through community-driven development. Also, countries could have a better understanding of the socioeconomic benefits in their territories. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Regina. Now we will continue.
Thank you very much, Regina.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nani. Switzerland would like to thank the IEO for its insightful evaluations and the GEF Secretariat for the respective management reports. Let me start with the evaluation on international waters focal area with its impressive portfolio. This focal area is of special interest and importance to Switzerland, and we therefore very much appreciate to learn about the significant contributions the GEF has made in supporting countries in their efforts for collaborative management of transboundary water ecosystems. We fully agree with the suggested recommendations and are pleased with the management response to the evaluation. We are particularly interested in following up on the question of enhanced monitoring and would be glad if the GEF Secretariat could inform on the progress in this area in one of the next council meetings. Finally, we do have some questions to the GEF Secretariat for the follow-up of the findings of this evaluation. So according to the report, the evaluation findings suggests that there are a limited number of GEF integrated water projects dedicated to groundwater and that transboundary water bodies with the highest risks are not always covered. How does the GEF Secretariat intend to tackle these gaps? Then the report also mentions limited integration and reflection of the integrated water focal areas mandate within the GEF 8 integrated programs. How will that be tackled in GEF 9? And finally, the relevance of a realistic scope and scale of interventions for both effectiveness and long-term sustainability are highlighted in the report, together with the challenge of balancing time efficiency with adequate stakeholder engagement and country ownership. So based on our own experience with transboundary water collaboration, we can confirm the relevance of these aspects that are highlighted in the evaluation report. And we would like to know what kind of measures that the GEF Secretariats would like to take there. Then for the evaluation on socio-economic benefits, well, the evaluation reports yields really a lot of interesting insights in how to support bridging global environmental objectives with local development needs, which in turn can reinforce the sustainability and effectiveness of interventions. We do agree with the 3 recommendations of the evaluation and with the endorsement of the recommendations in the management response. And we would be particularly interested to closely follow up on the implementation of recommendation 2, the strengthening of the country ownership, and recommendation 3, the tracking monitoring of co-benefits. As already stated before, we invite the GEF Secretariat to inform on the progress in these areas in one of the next council meetings. So concretely, the results of the OFP capacity building efforts and respective results, and also the progress on co-benefit monitoring. And finally, for the evaluation and management response to the MBS, as the evaluators point out, there is no formal classification and accordingly no common definition for MBS in the GEF. The evaluation recommends developing MBS-specific guidance for integration, tracking, and adaptive management in recommendation 1. While it does not call for the adoption of a common definition, it calls for this guidance to align with the internationally accepted criteria and to be fully embedded with GEF programming. So we welcome this recommendation and suggest that the internationally endorsed definitions and criteria, namely from the resolution adopted by the United Nations Environment Assembly on 2nd of March 22, and nature-based solutions for supporting sustainable development and IUCN standards 2020. We are a bit surprised about the partial agreement only in the management response for recommendation 1. And in any case, we welcome the Secretariat's decision to include guidance on the NBS within the GEF 9 programming directions and expect that this guidance will improve the integration and tracking of NBS while maintaining flexibility in GEF 9. We concur with Stubbs' observation that MBS are not an end in themselves, but a better way to deliver nature benefits through dealing with societal problems, and as such support the GEF's approach to focus on project-level theory of change. However, we would expect the guidance on MBS integration at this level to be as precise and comprehensive as possible. We also support the other recommendations and welcome that the Secretariat embraces these recommendations. While the management response explains how the GEF has and/or plans on addressing these points, we would like to understand a little bit better the following. For recommendation 2, how do you expect to implement the recommendation to prioritize the alignment of objectives with private sector interests by offering a wider range of more suitable financial instruments and mechanisms, such as parametric and index insurance, impact bonds, sovereign debt refinancing, and investment funds? Models will also include risk-sharing instruments like guarantees and first loss capital. And for recommendation 4, how do you plan on evidencing the cost effectiveness and co-benefits of MBS, including through the integration of indigenous and local knowledge systems? Monetizing the latter is challenging, as we know, and it might be difficult to demonstrate cost effectiveness in conventional terms. This said, we very much welcome the focus on socioeconomic benefits of MBS because it is precisely the focus on both planet and people that makes MBS so valuable. Thank you.
Many thanks, Andre. Maher, floor is yours.
So much, Naomi. Just a quick comment, and thank you for the evaluation reports. I really enjoyed them this time. Just a quick comment. Excuse me. Just a quick comment, and also I have to commend the GEF Secretariat for expanding the coverage of the international water focal area in terms of countries. I've been looking at and enjoying seeing Jordan been participating and benefiting first time ever since GEF 5 in the international water focal area, among others, namely Eritrea, Djibouti, and Yemen as well. So I just wanted to commend the GEF Secretariat for doing so and for having the integration in a different manner and been penetration for other countries to be part of this international water. One last comment, and I would like to stress the importance of Jordan being part of the international waters, since Jordan has been the second among globally the second scarce country in terms of water, and it's really and since we don't have international water as in such, and we don't share waters with other countries, it's a small amount of water that's allowed for Jordan. Yet being part of the international water focal area means a lot for Jordan and for the constituency. Thanks for the GEF Secretariat for doing so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maher. We will continue with the CSO network, followed by Anders and Joao. So CSO network, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. We have the three parts of the presentation.
because there have been 3 presentations. First is the International Waters Focal Area Management. So the GEF CSO network welcomes evaluation on international water focal area. We recognize international water focal area is very critical role in advancing the transboundary operation of delivering global environmental benefits across the marine life and freshwater systems. Evaluation highlights the key, including improved projects, performance, strengthening knowledge, management, and commendable progress in gender inclusion and stakeholder engagement. However, we wish to highlight several areas of concerns and priority for further actions of the Council. Transboundary and integration. International water management for transboundary cooperation must remain central even as the GEF moves towards the integration of multifocal areas approach. We are council to ensure that integration does not dilute the core focus on collective actions and cooperation across the boundaries, particularly in high-risk basins, aquifers, and coastal zones that require sustainable multilateral engagements. Coverage of high-risk water bodies. Evaluation identify critical gaps in international water management projects covers, particularly in relation to the groundwater and most at-risk boundary water bodies. We call for an expansion of GEF support to these underrepresented areas, guided by the robust risk of assessment and community vulnerability indicators. Addressing the water hazards and contamination in development countries. Communities in the development countries face acute challenges relating to the water pollution, unsafe wastewater discharges, hazards, contamination. These issues are often compounded by the weak regulatory enforcement and inadequate water infrastructures. We urge Council to kindly prioritize the project that address the waterborne hazards, contamination in community levels. Support safe water management and centralized treatment systems. Strengthen, safeguard, and monitor systems to prevent cross-border water pollution impacts. These threats pose risk up to the public health, biodiversity, and development outcomes. They must be addressed by urgency, equity, and inclusion at the heart of international water programming. In conclusion, CSO network stand ready to support GEF in strengthening international water focal areas. We are Council to adopt evaluation recommendations and to ensure the civil society voice remains central in shaping of future strategies, tracking progress and fostering innovations for the benefit of people, ecosystem, and our shared planets. And I wish, it's my personal wish maybe, that one day we will see our rivers and oceans as beautiful as we saw in the presentation. Thank you. And now my next colleague.
Thank you. I will now read on our statement for Agenda 10. This is actually my first time addressing the Council, so I'm Renata Alvarenga, and I come from the Youth Climate Movement in Brazil. The GEF CSO network welcomes the evaluation of socioeconomic co-benefits of GEF-funded interventions and the accompanying management response. We recognize the evaluation's finding that GEF-funded projects are associated with significant socioeconomic co-benefits, where environmental and development outcomes are achieved together. It is encouraging to see growing attention to these co-benefits since GEF 5, and that over 40% of assessed projects aim to strengthen capacity, build social capital, and promote new revenue streams and market access. However, the evaluation and management response both highlight that these co-benefits are not always systematically targeted, measured, or reported. So we support the call for clearer pathways to generating socioeconomic benefits in project design, including explicit articulation in the theory of change, anticipation of potential risks that may come up, and measures to ensure equitable distribution, particularly for the marginalized and low-income groups that we know are most affected. We also acknowledge the language around women's empowerment and the focus on gender equality as key for equitable distribution. We welcome the Secretariat's commitments to refine the project review process and to strengthen the capture of these benefits, as well as ongoing implementation on the policy of environmental and social safeguards to anticipate, prevent, minimize, and mitigate any adverse impacts. The emphasis on strengthening country portfolio coordination and empowering operational focal points is a very positive step, as is the intention to enhance tracking and reporting of these benefits through improved indicators and guidance for agencies. In addition, education-related co-benefits such as awareness raising, skills building, and inclusive climate education should be more clearly articulated, if possible, and tracked in project frameworks, particularly for youth and for women. As the Council considers the next steps, we urge you to have the participatory and independent monitoring approaches as priorities to ensure that the most affected communities and CSOs can contribute directly to evaluation and learning. Transparency, participatory budgeting, and the inclusion of diverse stakeholders and voices has to remain as a core of the GEF's approach. While these recommendations are crucial for the remainder of GEF 8, we also encourage the GEF to apply these lessons to the GEF 9 replenishment process. The CSO network continues to advocate for direct access to resources, intersectional funding windows, and new metrics that can capture justice, agency, and resilience in all of its work. This will include creating more intentional entry points for youth participation, not only as beneficiaries, as they already are, but also as partners and decision makers as part of the GEF programming. Let this evaluation serve as a catalyst for embedding socioeconomic benefits at the heart of GEF's mission, building a more just, inclusive, and effective partnership with the communities we serve. As civil society representatives and young leaders, we stand ready to co-design indicators, co-implement grassroots programming, and co-monitor outcomes with you. GEF's vision for socioeconomic co-benefits can only be realized with the partnership from those that are closest to the ground. Thank you. I'll now pass on to my colleague.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The GEF CSO network welcomes the evaluation of GEF support for nature-based solutions and supports its recommendations and the management response. With regard to recommendation 3 on the inclusive capacity building efforts, we believe it is critical to incorporate climate and nature education as a pillar of GEF work, and it should be an integral part of the GEF support for nature-based solutions. Climate education is crucial to addressing challenges in the GEF's nature-based solutions portfolio. Specifically, education can enhance the long-term sustainability of NBS projects by empowering communities in the Global South with a deeper understanding of environmental issues, thereby fostering stronger local governance and adaptive management. It also strengthens stakeholder engagement and inclusivity by equipping diverse groups, including women and indigenous peoples and the local communities, for meaningful participation through respect for varied perspectives, leading to more equitable projects. Furthermore, climate education builds essential technical and managerial capacity needed to implement and scale NBS effectively, supporting systematic change and growth of green jobs. Finally, education can improve policy coherence and demonstration of NBS co-benefits by fostering a better understanding among the public and policymakers of their multifaceted advantages, which can drive demand for clear definitions, support cost-effectiveness arguments, and build political will for integrated national planning. Prioritizing climate education strengthens public support for various GEF programs, ensuring that environmental action is not only top-down, but grassroots-driven. This reinforces resilience and equitable opportunities for vulnerable populations, directly tackling many of the systemic challenges and gaps identified in the IEO's valuable evaluation of NBS. By fostering a deeper understanding of NBS principles and benefits, climate education can be a powerful catalyst for improving the relevance, effectiveness, impact, and sustainability of the GEF's investments. With regards to the recommendation 4 on enhancing the integration of indigenous and local knowledge systems, like GEF CSO Network believes that GEF needs to do more to systematically document indigenous and local knowledge and incorporate it into its project design, monitoring, and evaluation. We have long called for the GEF to adopt more participatory monitoring and evaluation processes and empower indigenous people and local communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the CSO network. Anders, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, as always, to the IEO for 3 very useful reports. Just 3 very brief comments. On international water, we very much welcome the consistency of the gender work and that is recognized as a strength. Very useful reflection. At the same time, we note the challenges in the private sector engagement and would welcome improvements in line with the recommendations ahead of GEF 9. We also take the occasion to note for international waters, but also other areas ahead of GEF 9 that we are positive indeed to transboundary cooperation, since that can often be very useful in many projects. And we also have positive experience in our home region in that regard. On co-benefits, we certainly recognize the positive benefits and that is also useful for longevity of projects. But at the same time, we would be somewhat cautious for administrative reasons of not overburdening additional indicators in view of sort of the reflections which IEO had in Paris on trade-offs between efficiency and adding additional indicators which could overburden the work. So sort of welcome to see guidance on that ahead of GEF 9, but to strike the right balance between not overburdening the administration. Thanks.
Thanks, Ander. We'll continue with Joao, and then we will break for some responses from the Secretariat and the IEO. Joao, floor is yours.
Thank you, Noemi. Our constituency would like to welcome the evaluations and management responses presented under items 9, 10, and 11, and also thank Gita and all the colleagues that have made these presentations. They were very informative and great. We support the recommendations that aim to enhance the GEF's effectiveness in supporting developing countries through capacity building, inclusive financing, and long-term institutional development. Meetings such as this one, which bring together countries from the same region, clearly show how many of our challenges are shared. One such challenge is the high turnover of operational focal points in many countries, which underscores the importance of continuous training and institutional memory building. We therefore strongly support recommendations to reinforce the role of operational focal points, promote peer learning, and create spaces for ongoing technical and strategic engagement. On international waters, we agree that transboundary cooperation must remain the central axis of the focal area. We welcome the proposed efforts to build national capacities, particularly of OFPs and relevant institutions, and to provide training on innovative financing models, including through private sector engagement. At the same time, we recognize that grants and concessional finance remain essential to ensure the viability and sustainability of many transboundary initiatives. With regard to the evaluation of socioeconomic co-benefits, we fully support the call to integrate equity, gender, and inclusion more systematically into project design. We would also like to echo the intervention made by Mexico regarding the need for indicators on socioeconomic benefits in GEF projects. Moreover, we value the recommendation for OFPs to organize regular coordination meetings with agencies and partners. Such efforts are crucial to strengthen country ownership and to embed co-benefits into broader development strategies. On nature-based solutions, we take note of the growing emphasis on blended finance and recognize the need to expand private sector engagement as part of the effort to meet global environmental targets. However, we believe it is important to acknowledge that without sustained and predictable public financing, many of these targets will remain out of reach. Critical NBS interventions, such as biodiversity conservation, ecosystem restoration, and indigenous stewardship often do not generate immediate or bankable returns. These are not transitional sectors, but rather core pillars of environmental stability and must continue to receive grant-based support as a matter of priority. In this context, we highlight the role of indigenous peoples and local communities who already lead many effective nature-based solution initiatives on the ground. We encourage the GEF to ensure that its NBS strategy includes inclusive access mechanisms such as direct access or tailored support to IPLC organizations in order to truly deliver just and lasting outcomes. We therefore call on the GEF to maintain a balanced and inclusive approach, ensuring that innovative instruments complement rather than replace predictable concessional finance, especially in areas that deliver global public goods without commercial incentives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joao. We will now break to get some responses from the GEF Secretariat and the IAO. We continue then with the list of participants. So here, Secretariat, back to you. Who would like to start? There is a microphone.
Sure. Oh yeah, I can take this one. Thank you very much to council members for the comments and questions. Let me address the few comments on the management response to the evaluation and nature-based solution on NBS. Thank you, Andre, for the comments. It's well noted on the idea of fusing the global standard and recognized international definitions. That was indeed our plan in the forthcoming guidance. On your question on blended finance and how we see it, as was articulated by our Brazilian colleagues, while not all nature-based solutions deliver bankable projects, by definition, nature-based solutions are here to address societal challenges, and some of them do create potential revenues, but it's a question of risk-return profile for the private sector. And that's why we see blended finance and our possibility to offer a range of different instruments that are tailored to the local situation, the specific nature-based solution, and the risk profile that needs to be mitigated for the private sector to come in as a solution to attract private sector investment in nature-based solution. So that's our approach, is really to use our ability to have different instruments and be flexible, that we think will be a solution to attract private sector investment on nature-based solution, and this will be further articulated. On the evidence base, we recognize, as you pointed, that it's challenging to do cost-effectiveness assessments for NBS, and that's why the knowledge base is relatively small. We'll be encouraging projects in nature-based solution to do such cost-effectiveness assessments when possible in the guidance we will issue as part of the program directions, recognizing it will not be possible every time, but this will contribute to the global knowledge base on that. The other dimension is our work on capturing the socioeconomic benefits more systematically for nature-based solutions will also help build that knowledge base. In addition, as we have in the GEF 8 integrated program that really have a focus for most of them on nature-based solution, we have those coordination platform, this knowledge platform that will contribute to that. So the blue and green island integrated program has really a focus on nature-based solution, and as part of the coordination platform, we'll develop a nature-based solution accelerator that will, in the SEEDS context, contribute to that knowledge base. Similarly, in the restoration integrated program, there will be several community of practices on restoration, including one dedicated to IPLC traditional knowledge and practice on restoration. And I could use other example, and we foresee the same type of contribution in GEF9 of those coordination and knowledge platform. To the CSO network, many thanks for, as well noted, the central role of climate education. And on the need to document more indigenous knowledge, let me note that our agency are already documenting lessons learned related to stakeholder engagement in indigenous peoples and knowledge. We have more than 400 lessons already recorded in our GEF portal system that is also part of our knowledge management system. And we foresee in our guidance to further encourage nature-based solution projects to document lessons specific to indigenous knowledge and their traditional practices. So this is really well noted, and likewise on participatory monitoring system. And let me maybe turn it to my colleagues for the rest.
We don't get any feedback. Okay, here we go. On the monitoring of the socioeconomic co-benefits, thanks for the comments on that. I didn't hear any questions, but to the comment from the CSO network, and I'm sorry that I can't see you from where I'm sitting. We do agree that participatory monitoring does bring a lot of value to the monitoring and evaluation framework for the GEF, and that's particularly where the communities are involved and in fragile and conflict-affected situations. So we will be looking at that. And then I did hear a few comments, particularly from Anders, about being mindful of the balance, the trade-off between adding more indicators and streamlining and making sure that we have a lean results measurement framework for GEF9. And so what we're thinking of at the moment is maybe 2 or 3 indicators that target socioeconomic co-benefits in terms of keeping the RMF lean, as I mentioned, and also mindful of the fact that this burden usually falls on the executing partners at the country level. So we are mindful of that as we put together the RMF. And let me pass on to Andrew.
Thank you, Jonathan. So just a quick couple of reactions in the interest of time. I think some of the questions around international waters, for example, addressing topics like groundwater or working in priority environmental basins, like all other GEF focal areas, international waters is country driven. So we will not invest into a region unless countries request that. So topics like groundwater, that would come from a country, just like any focal area, and be OFP endorsed. And so it's important to recognize that those requests are where the demand goes. We have seen an interest in groundwater. In GEF 8, we have a project actually in the Amazon basin exploring mapping the full extent of the aquifer. It came up in the TAG meetings, and you may have seen in the first draft of the programming directions that groundwater is a renewed focus. The country-driven angle of international waters, I think, also speaks to our colleague from India's question around, or statement around respecting bilateral multilateral agreements. Again, no project would come from international waters unless requested by the governments, and of course is prioritized underneath what they are doing bilaterally or multilaterally. There was a question around wastewater, and I think this is a great example of where international waters has historically worked on topics like wastewater and other land-based sources of pollution as they enter the marine environment. The Clean and Healthy Oceans Integrated Program is a good reflection of how that can work through other forms of programming at the GEF. And so the Clean Healthy Oceans IP has addresses topics like wastewater. In fact, actually has a child project in Jordan. Unfortunately, our colleague isn't there, but that also speaks to working with countries that often have not had an opportunity to participate in international waters programming. I think in the interest of time, I'll stop there.
Many thanks, Jurgis, Jonathan, and Andrew. I'll now hand it over to the IEO. No reactions? Okay, good. So we can continue with the list of speakers, starting with Mauricio, followed by IPAC, and then Concom. So Mauricio, tienes la palabra.
Sí, muchas gracias, Noemí. La circunscripción del
Thank
Cono
you
Sur
very much, Noemi. The constituency of the Southern Cone welcomes the 3 evaluations from the OIE and wants to state the following when it comes to international waters. Given that there aren't many projects on subterranean waters, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay were able to finance through GEF to jointly promote the Guarani aquifer, which is one of the most important stocks of underwater fresh water in the world. We created the project that was implemented between 2003 and 2009, and the implementation of the aquatic integration program, which was implemented between 2021 and 2023 during GEF 7. And we want to share with you the fact that as a region, we are considering designing a new project for the aquifer to give continuity to the projects I just mentioned. We also would like to recommend that ecosystems are considered when it comes to delivering international water projects. Our constituency recommends that we work more cooperatively when it comes to international waters, because this is important when it comes to fishing, traceability, and international waters. These projects allow to integrate different countries, and this is important for us. In regard to the co-benefits, we would like to point out that we should consider that the focus should take into account the particular aspects of each country as well as their developing priorities. And we think that the country engagement strategy within the GEF 8 is to strengthen national ownership of the countries through the focal points so they can be more active. And as we mentioned yesterday, we think that the participation of the operational focal points is key when it comes to identifying priorities, national priorities, and to select agencies, as well as to define the projects and consider the platforms for each country, as well as the cooperation among institutions and the management of national projects, as recommended on the 2nd recommendation of the OIE. When it comes to accountability, we must comply with transparency, national ownership, and clear leadership. Therefore, we would like to encourage workshops such as the one that was done in Quito during 2024 and the one in Ecuador developed last May. Therefore, we would like to encourage working in this area, and we would like to ask that during the GEF 9, this support to the focal points is stronger and that the resources come along to strengthen the work that the focal points can do. And when it comes to NBS, we would like to point out that when we talk about the focus on nature, we must be coherent and take into account what the CDB states. Ecosystems and the framework is deeper. NBS can be understood as components or tools specific for the work we want to do. Therefore, the countries in my constitution promote an integrated approach, taking into account different ideas that have been developed during the last 20 years within the CBD.
Muchas gracias, Mauricio.
Thank you very much,
Now we will
Mauricio.
continue with IPAC, followed by Kong. IPAC, floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We comment on two items. First, the Evaluation Office report and the report on international waters. We at the Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group appreciate the Evaluation Office report. Building on the recommendations from Indigenous peoples and the Scientific and Technical Advisory Panel's paper on direct funding to Indigenous communities, we emphasize the importance of disaggregating data on Indigenous peoples in future evaluations. This approach will enable us to draw meaningful lessons and enhance our collective efforts in preserving biodiversity and nature at the ground level. Disaggregated data is crucial for understanding the specific impacts of GEF projects in our communities. As highlighted by the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, collecting data that respect self-identification and involves Indigenous peoples in all stages, from planning to dissemination, is essential for accurate representation and effective policy development. By incorporating disaggregated data, the GEF can ensure that its initiatives are more culturally appropriate and aligned with the self-determined priorities of Indigenous peoples and their communities. This will not only improve project outcomes, but also strengthen the partnership between the GEF and Indigenous peoples in our shared commitment to environmental stewardship. On the report on international waters, this is very excellent and timely dissemination. We would like to add the need to mention and include ancestral waters, which are customarily governed and stewarded for protection by Indigenous communities for millennia. This is in line with recommendations to integrate Indigenous knowledge and science-based nature solutions. The inclusion of ancestral waters matters because in terms of cultural sovereignty, they are not just marine resources. They are real and actual living extensions of Indigenous peoples' identities and sacred geographies with spiritual and cultural knowledge and value systems attached on these waters and the main reasons for their persistence and protection. Based on our interaction and learning exchange with Indigenous communities, many ancestral marine territories include globally significant ecosystems like coral reefs, mangroves, and migratory routes, as we've seen in the video just presented. In many countries, coral reefs are considered worship areas, resulting in their protection and conservation in the same way that Christians would protect their cathedrals. These water areas form vital sites for biodiversity and climate regulation. And as admitted by marine experts during dialogues with Indigenous peoples, Indigenous stewardship of coral reefs as sacred sites contributes to healthier marine ecosystems and often outperforming conventional marine protected areas. The recognition of ancestral waters upholds the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and advances environmental justice in the face of ocean grabbing and extractive threats. We suggest and recommend that the GEF Council explicitly recognize ancestral waters to ensure that these are acknowledged in project design, safeguards, monitoring frameworks, and biodiversity indicators alongside terrestrial ancestral lands. Further, we recommend that customary governance systems invest in Indigenous-led ocean stewardship and customary tenure regimes through targeted funding under the GEF's international waters and biodiversity focal areas and in new mechanisms like the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. Further, we ask that the free, prior, and informed consent in marine contexts should apply not only on terrestrial interventions, but also to marine and coastal areas within indigenous governance. We can submit to the Council ancestral waters that we have mapped to show how indigenous knowledge about extents of their land, territories, and waters have merged with scientific methods, including geographic information system, to result in their conservation. We would also like to acknowledge the GEF for the ICI-1 and ICI-2 that focuses on indigenous communities in scaling up environmental work with impact. We also thank the CSO network and progressive council members who have persistently mentioned indigenous peoples and local communities in their statements related to the multiple agenda items, including in nature-based solutions. Finally, recognizing and funding ancestral waters is both a moral imperative and a strategic opportunity. It strengthens indigenous rights, delivers proven conservation outcomes, and ensures that GEF remain aligned with rights-based, inclusive, and effective biodiversity and climate goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much to IPAC. And now I see it's Evans. Evans requesting the floor, followed by Yoko. Evans, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Council Secretary Naomi, and good afternoon, Council members and alternates. We want to make a comment on the evaluation of the socioeconomic benefits, in particular, for the GF. And our constituency would like to thank the IEO for these engaging presentations. On the socioeconomic benefits, we agree that some key factors that help in sustaining benefits post-project closure include 1, community ownership, and 2, capacity building together to improve local knowledge and resilience, and 3, improving partnerships between communities, local governments, and NGOs. We have seen that projects have been shown to be limited in tracking benefits from their presentations, and where there was a general lack of robust indicators or monitoring systems for socioeconomic benefits. This has led to underreporting and undervaluation of development impacts. We therefore appreciate the recommendations made and the GF Secretariat management responses given, and we are glad to note that most of these challenges will be addressed by the country engagement strategy, capacity building initiative for OFPs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evans. Yoko, floor is yours. Yeah, can IT help us to enable Yoko's microphone, please? She's on the seat of Tsuyoshi. IT, if you can hear us. Yoko, she's, yeah. I don't know. Yoko from, oh, is it? Okay, so maybe, I'm sorry, Yoko, but maybe we can maybe continue with Andrea. I see you in online, so apologies for that. So, Andrea, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Apologies, Japan. Thank you very much for the evaluation papers. We support all of the recommendations in the papers, and we'll comment briefly on the International Waters Programme. We support the ongoing relevance of this programme and its focus on transboundary issues. While much of the first phase has focused on enabling activities, we suggest that more direct support will be needed in the future. This will be particularly true for the implementation of the BBNJ agreement, for which Australia and New Zealand have been long-term proponents. We note the evaluation finding on overly ambitious project design. In the Pacific region, our experience is that keeping program design simple and working through existing governance systems and programs can be the most effective and sustainable means of implementation. We also note the evaluation finding on the challenges of working with the private sector, and we recommend that the GEF teams develop partnerships and co-financing with others who do have expertise in this area, for example, the Global Fund for Coral Reefs. Finally, we note the International Waters Focal Area has consistently maintained a focus on gender mainstreaming across GEF phases, which we welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And I see Yoko and Abigail have joined the list, so I will give you the floor when the time comes. So we will continue now with Emily, followed by Wampi, and then Nicholas. Emily, floor is yours.
Thank you, Noemi. Our constituency would also like to thank Gita and the entire IEO team for these evaluations and the valuable insight that they provide to us, as well as to the Secretariat for their responses, which we can support. Now, briefly on the socioeconomic co-benefits evaluation. We welcome the findings indicating the critical contributions of GEF investments in terms of socioeconomic benefits. We recognize the ability to demonstrate and deliver socioeconomic benefits is essential for ensuring sustainability beyond project closure, and we're supportive of the recommendations, particularly on strengthening country-level support. And with regards to NBS, we welcome this highly relevant and timely evaluation, as nature-based solutions provide a key pathway to integrate nature and climate efforts while also delivering important socioeconomic benefits. However, despite the growing importance, global funding for NBS remains limited, and countries often do not have sufficient internal capacity and technical expertise to implement NBS projects. Therefore, we strongly encourage the GEF to follow up on the recommendation to improve capacity building, support multi-stakeholder platforms and policy coherence to scale up the NBS approach across a broader range of interventions with an explicit focus on promoting gender-responsive approaches and implementing the engagement and governance roles of IPLCs. And finally, a key finding in the evaluation is that the long-term impact and sustainability is lower for NBS projects compared to non-NBS projects. We underscore the importance of following up on the recommendations to build a stronger partnership with the private sector to ensure both short-term financial viability and secure long-term financial goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. Wampi, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So add my voice to those that support all the three reports and also the recommendations. I see a common thread in our comments, and that's very much the focus on sustainability. So looking at the waters, international waters, we really see that also there the sustainability of projects and programs should be enhanced, whether through innovative financing models as suggested by the management response or through other means. But we really think that it's important to take sustainability into account when designing the projects. And so the project design should include sustainability plans. Then if you look at then the evaluation of the socio-economic co-benefits, I think there also it's key that if we want to have a sustainable project, then it's really important to have these socio-economic benefits in place, and that you have a clear vision of those, what they are. And I think it's almost impossible to reach scalable environmental impact if you don't have these social economic benefits visible. So I think it's very important to keep on working on that. And then lastly, if you look then to the nature-based solutions, there also, I think the long-term sustainability remains a challenge. And I think we support the call for a more strategic use of, for example, blended finance to engage the private sector in nature-based solutions, also to enhance the long-term, the future-proof aspect of these instruments. And we really welcome the Secretariat's commitment to improving the measurements of the socio-economic co-benefits within the NBS, especially also for vulnerable groups. I think it's also critical to take these on board in the policy outwork. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Wampi. We will now continue with Ben, and then Yoko, Avi, and Nicholas. So Ben, floor is yours.
Many thanks, and many thanks, Co-Chair, for the floor. Firstly, just to say many thanks to Geeta and Fabricio, and echoing Brazil Yao's comments, we thank you very much for including your comments with important roles in the IEO. Unfortunately, it was a little bit too hard to record your names at speed. And just on that, just to say that I think the evaluations you presented today represent a huge amount of work from IEO. However, such a huge amount of work isn't necessarily given justice in such rushed presentations. I do recognise, of course, that we're short for time, and however, I think that we also need to, and I know you're also considering trying to present all of these evaluations ahead of completion of OPS 8. And that's a challenge for you too. Anyway, just finally on the presentations themselves, just to say that I think the videos are very valuable and powerful tool, and we welcome you presenting these to us in this way. But we also need to be clear, of course, who the videos are aimed at in terms of the amount of detail we are providing within those. Just to say that obviously all three evaluations are hugely significant for the UK, as the CEO has mentioned, regards the international waters area. And obviously it's very important to consider all of those evaluations carefully as we move towards GEF 9. So just very brief comments for now, just in terms of the nature-based solutions evaluation. We thought that was a very useful look back at GEF's portfolio from GEF 5 to GEF 8 from a nature-based solutions perspective, and obviously give us lots of very positive examples in terms of interventions showing before and after, and this obviously helps present the narrative of GEF's work on achieving positive nature outcomes. However, we also want to consider going beyond the sort of positive nature positive actions like nature-based solutions, but also consider some of the issues that may be driving nature negative results, such as systemic weaknesses and market signals, which obviously contribute to degradation of natural and ecological assets. We will provide more detail in writing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you, Yoko, for the patience. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Noemi, for giving the floor. And I would like to appreciate all the evaluation of the IEO and the related management responses by the Secretariat, and also very much enjoy the video presentation, which should be used for the visibility purpose. I would like to start a comment of the international water focal area evaluation. The expansion of the marine protected areas is one of the effective measures for reaching target 3 of KMGBF, which calls for ensuring at least 30% of terrestrial and inland water areas and 30% of marine and coastal areas are effectively conserved and managed by 2030. Noting that marine ecosystem does not remain within jurisdictional boundaries, transboundary conservation of marine ecosystem is essential, and we need to remind ourselves that it requires close and effective cooperation, such as data sharing across nations, and thus increased resources are necessary in this regard. To this end, supporting 30 by 30 efforts in transboundary coastal and marine ecosystems is a key item, and we expect the GEF to contribute to reaching target 3 throughout the support under this item. In addition, natural disasters related to water caused by climate change are occurring more frequently around the world. Therefore, in order to build a resilient society, disaster risk reduction measures or based on the risk-informed investment will become more necessary. I would like to comment on the socioeconomic co-benefits evaluation. The fact that many of the projects showed environmental and development challenges and effects, also socioeconomic co-benefits, especially in strengthening human and social capital, is considered important to ensure sustainable climate change adaptation and environmental protection. We hope that the GEF-9 will continue to take actions to improve the visibility and sustainability of socioeconomic co-benefits, from the project design stage to monitoring and strengthening implementation and coordination at the national level, through the result management framework and country engagement strategy. We also hope that the expanded evaluation tools proposed by the GEF in 2024 will be steadily introduced into accurately identify co-benefits, and that the overall picture of the results will be more appropriately assessed. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Naoko. I will now give the floor to Avi, followed by Nicholas. Avi, floor is yours. Yeah, I think that, yeah, you're back on, Avi. You're good to go.
Okay. Going first on the international waters, I think we appreciate you doing this well in advance of the BBNJ responsibilities kind of coming to the GEF and the programming sense. I think timing of evaluations is always kind of an art form. We appreciate the insights on improving project performance. I think one of the things that concerned us in here, this report was about just the challenge of financial sustainability. And it does seem that there needs to be more thought given to planning for that over the future and the life of the project after the GEF support ends, and also pursuing innovative finance models. We're also concerned that the sector engagement in this program area remains limited. We'd like to see more private sector participation, given that oftentimes, international waters are being exploited or used, by a variety of industry sectors. And we welcome exploring strategies to incentivize more participation of private sector actors. I also want to echo comments that a few people made about the importance of the transboundary issues, because obviously this is one of the things that is squarely within the GEF's purview to support. I'm going to jump to nature-based solutions. In terms of that evaluation, I think it's interesting to know this one is one of the first times we've had an evaluation of this. It has become rather a fashionable thing of late. And I think it's really helpful to have this because, one of the findings that struck us is the lack of definition. And it seems though there is an opportunity here for the GEF to potentially make a really valuable contribution in this new area to make sure that there's sort of clear definitions and around how projects are defined. Because I think if you don't have this and you don't have clear standards, you do risk there being sort of a backlash and the reputation of these types of interventions being harmed if things are not properly implemented. So I think the clarity in terms of what is a well-designed intervention and what is not is really important. And I think the other thing obviously is really important, and this gets into the last evaluation, is just the importance of sustainability at the local level. Over the long term, all of these projects need to be sustained by the people who live there. And this kind of comes into this the evaluation of socio and economic co-benefits. We appreciate the amount of effort that went into but all of these evaluations, but it seems in particular with this one, you really had to use quite a few different types of techniques and information sources in order to get at this issue. It clearly, I think, underscores the fact that while we don't want an additional layer of bureaucracy in terms of projects, there should be some thought given to how to, as I think my Mexican colleague was saying, to have kind of consistent data gathering at the project level. I mean, I think that over the lifetime of projects and long after the GEF finishes, if people who live in the areas where you're trying to intervene see benefits in terms of job creation, in terms of better incomes for their families, for their businesses, if they see better health impacts for themselves, that makes it much more likely that they're going to be interested in maintaining these systems and maintaining these practices that you're trying to put in place. It also, I think, builds a much stronger case that for local governments and national governments to actually, continue investments because they can see the benefits. And I have to say that I think this is just really important to underscore here, that we really do need to be thinking about what are the benefits at the local level. We'd rather that you kind of avoid, the IEO avoid using kind of some of the buzzwords or buzz acronyms that we tend to use like SDGs, and instead kind of use clear and accurate language to describe the project objectives. And I have to say, we're also, I think, just listening to the conversation today, a little bit concerned. There's kind of been a repetition of the use of IPLCs. And I take comfort in the fact that I think local communities encompasses just about everybody who lives nearby. I think we just need to make sure that projects are implemented in an even-handed way that take into account everyone's interests in the local area, because your long-term sustainability is going to depend on people perceiving the interventions to be fair and not privileging some groups over others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abby. I'll now give the floor to Nicolas, followed by Aliona. Nicolas, floor is yours.
Thank you, Noemi, and thank you to the IEO for this very useful evaluations, your presentations, and the key findings, which are of high value for the Council. We generally support the recommendations, and I also want to commend the Secretariat's ongoing efforts to implement the IEO's recommendations. I will try to focus on some points that have not been raised extensively and start with a brief comment on the evaluation of the internal waters focal area. I think we all agree that it's clear that the IW focal area will even gain in importance and visibility once the BBNJ agreement is in force. Nonetheless, the IEO has clearly found that the focal area has struggled so far to achieve meaningful private sector engagement. This is why we must make sure to engage the private sector more strongly and expand synergies with all other focal areas. I think major topics such as freshwater and wastewater management, aquatic food systems, etc., should generally offer clear points of entry in that respect. We appreciate that the GEF Secretary is already actively addressing this specific challenge. With regards to the socioeconomic co-benefits, I want to emphasize that socioeconomic co-benefits are a key aspect of environmental protection, a just transition, and of course, any holistic approach to sustainable development. And it is crucial to make sure that the people involved and affected buy into the GEF's action, especially on the local level. And putting an emphasis on people's livelihoods and their participation is certainly a good way to achieve such a buy-in. In order to ensure that social protection is a key component across all multilateral climate funds, we support the work of the Task Force on Adaptive Social Protection, and we see this as an important co-benefit to be targeted under GEF 9. And finally, I would like to comment on the IEO's findings on GEF support for nature-based solutions. The report shows that NBS play an increasing and successful role in GEF programming, and that NBS do contribute to measurable environmental and socio-economic co-benefits in a cost-efficient manner. Still, I want to thank the IEO to clearly show that there is plenty of room for further integration of NBS across the GEF portfolio. We would like to see the role of NBS much more prevalent in GEF 9, especially in the climate change area. We feel that nature-based solutions could be the GEF's unique contribution. Therefore, the GEF should focus on ecosystem-based adaptation and mitigation via nature-based solutions, as the more traditional approaches may already be covered by the other climate funds like GCF, the CIFs, and the Adaptation Fund. To strengthen nature-based solutions within the GEF, we specifically support the IEO's recommendation to implement clear guidance under GEF 9 programming directions. An important step would be to improve the monitoring of NBS via clear definitions, indicators, and tagging. Standardized approaches to classify and value NBS can not only improve cross-sector and cross-country comparability, but also provide information for investment decision-making. And this is particularly relevant for mobilizing the private sector. In this context, we would like to reiterate the need for stronger involvement of the regional and multilateral development banks, and we fully support the Secretariat's efforts to advance the mainstreaming of blended finance with a strong focus on NBS under GEF 9. Finally, we agree with the Secretariat that a more consistent use of terms, approaches, and indicators across the GEF should generally not affect the GEF's flexibility to adapt to diverse project contexts and local conditions. And this is why we encourage close cooperation with existing frameworks and initiatives, such as the TNFD, the ENACT partnership. And I would also like to echo Switzerland's recommendation to closely rely on the UNEA 6 resolution on NBS. So with this, we remain committed to supporting the GEF in advancing this important agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. And now we'll go to Aliona. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Naomi. I'm getting a practice to end all the speakers, so I don't know, jumping in the last minute. So I'll be really short. Congratulations on the report. Indeed, it's a lesson learned for all of us, but it's a good lesson learned and a good practice for us, because you're getting on board, those countries that are not being part of the lucky family, being washed by oceans, seas, and others. So we're getting on board landlocked countries, which is really important, to mention that, and really important to not get out of the picture, because they are members, and they are contributing to the international waters. They are contributing to nature-based solutions. This is first. Second, nevertheless, despite this fact, the lesson learned that we're getting from GEF 5 to GEF 8 is that this is a long-term project. That the sustainability and, the fact that one project started and had some outcomes need to be continued, it's good. Then we have to continue on sustainability and, in the countries that need more effort to dig into that. Third, let's stick to the terms in terms of the procedure and get out of the bureaucracy. And in case of necessity, to have emergency interventions, because we are facing the climate change. We're facing the changes, that we cannot stay anymore apart. So I think that here the Council has to take the right decisions to have reasonable terms and to have reasonable projects. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Aliona, ending up in a high note. And with that, we don't have any more participants requesting the floor, so I will hand it over maybe to Jorges, Jonathan, and Andrew, and then back to the IEO to some final remarks. So, Jorges, floor is yours.
Thank you again, Council members, for the comments. I didn't hear any specific questions, but mainly remarks and comments on the support to the implementation of the recommendation and specific areas to emphasize to which we all agree. I want to really clarify that we will pay attention to be entirely consistent with the CBD, to our colleague from Peru, and we well noted all the areas of emphasis on the sustainability, on policy coherence, the country platforms, blended finance engagement with private sector for sustainability as well, and what you expect to see in the guidance on NBS. So for issues of time, I will stop here, but all have been well noted and we'll act upon them in our guidance. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. In the same vein on the socioeconomic co-benefits, we really appreciate the support from Council for the approach that we're proposing to take to respond to the IEO evaluations. And so we will be working on that as we move forward in GEF 9. So thanks again for your support. That's it.
Similarly, echoing just all the great support of encouragement for the International Waters Focal Area. That's very helpful for us, and it's well received. There were a few comments on the private sector I just want to quickly comment on. I think it's worth noting we do have some very positive examples of engaging with the private sector, for example, in shipping, in fisheries, and in the beverage sector. It can be hard to work with the private sector in a regional and multi-country setting versus in a national setting where most GEF projects are. So that's something to consider in the context. And we often do find good traction working through industry platforms versus specific companies. The good examples of this are in fisheries certifications and working on addressing IUU. We are keen in looking towards GEF 9 to do more, of course, working with the private sector, and it's certainly part of the recommendation that we intend to put a lot of focus on. And we're already seeing a lot of interests working specifically with the financial sector around their interest in freshwater marine ecosystems. So I think there's going to be lots more new opportunities to expand on that as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And well, with that said, back to the IEO for some final remarks.
Yeah, thank you very much. For the appreciation of the hard work of the IEO staff, much appreciated, and from the guidance of the Council. Very quickly on IPAC's comments, we have a forthcoming evaluation on inclusion of marginalized groups in FCV context. So that will address, your one of your questions about. We're not going to go for advise on separate indicators, but just looking broadly at the impacts. The second is on ancestral water. We didn't directly address it, but this came up in the context of trying to balance conversations and inclusion of different groups versus the efficiency. And this was where we heard about this struggle. Abby, point well noted on SDGs and the use of terminology, and we'll make sure we look out for that in future evaluations. And Ben, this is an unusual year, as you know, it's the OPS year, and that's why we are sort of inundating you with a few evaluations. We're trying to keep them brief, but believe me, next year we will go back to regular business and not bring you 4 and 5 in a session. So just bear with us for this year till the replenishment is done, because if we don't do it, then we are asked, where's the evidence for what you say? So it's this catch-22 for the IEO. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the really useful conversation and valuable comments. At this point, I see that there's no more comments or interventions. So I would like to invite Council to take note of the evaluation recommendations across the 3 documents that have been presented, and adopt the draft decisions that are included in documents GEF/C69/07, GEF/C69/08, And thirdly, GEF/69/09. I'll take that the three documents have been agreed. Thank you. So now we move on to the very last agenda item 12. It's the only item getting in the way of karaoke or any other fun things you intend to do this evening. And this is the forward-year financial year 26 work program and budget of the Independent Evaluation Office. So for this, I'd like to invite Ms. Geeta Batra from the GEF IO to introduce document GEF/E/C69/05, the FY26 work program and budget of the Independent Evaluation Office. Over to you, Geeta.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard. We didn't want to fall behind staff because they always put a pretty picture of an animal or something. So this is a picture of the red ibis taken by our team members in Guyana on a mission. But anyway, so I had to make sure that we show that so that now we've set you up, Rosina, for tomorrow. Okay, next on our FY 2026 work program and budget. This is the last document from the IEO, and won't hold you up for that glass of wine that you're eagerly waiting for since we've taxed you. I'm going to very quickly provide you with an OPS 8 status, as a lot of people have asked me in the corridors about it, the evaluation work in progress, the management action record, which has been referred to a few times today. We do engage in knowledge management and learning, and finally, budget and human resources. Next. So just very quickly, that's going to be the symbol for OPS 8. We're slowly releasing stuff. The theme is integration, and a sort of title in the works is from integration to impact. Next slide, please. What is it covering? It's covering programming strategy, institutional issues, policies from gender to stakeholder engagement. Is GEF adaptable, inclusive? Is it actually capable of catalyzing transformation? But beyond process and policy, we are actually measuring what really matters, right? Which is results. We're analyzing outcomes, sustainability. You've heard some of it today. We're spotlighting innovations, advanced technologies, nature-based solutions, which you witnessed today, and the catalytic role of GEF in enabling policy coherence and scaling finance. Quality evaluations require meaningful engagement, and we'd like to thank many of you and several of you, agencies, council members, countries, etc., for supporting us over this last 2-3 years as we are proceeding with OPS 8. We also have a team of advisors. They look much more photogenic here than they do in person, but we've hired them more for their experience than we have for their ability to be attractive. Next slide, please. So we presented the early evidence for on the evaluation findings highlights in Paris, as I had mentioned earlier. We wanted to provide early evidence. We came in with a summary. We actually put our necks out this time because we wanted to get in and influence the GEF 9 policy and programming directions earlier so that we could identify areas for improvement. What's the evidence base? And that's why you're getting inundated. 34 evaluations over the last 3 years. 23 have been completed and have been brought to council. We have 11 ongoing, and these will come to you through FY 26-27. We will not inundate you with 4 and 5 every council. Next slide, please. And so what's the timing? The timing is the draft report. We're going to be spending our summer writing OPS 8. The final report will be released in September 2025. This is your last chance. If there's something, a message that you would like us to convey, you feel strongly about, if we can provide the evidence, we will include it in OPS 8. The presentation is planned for the second replenishment meeting in October 2025. with a presentation to the GEF Council for final adoption of recommendations in December 2025. So the management action record, I don't know how many of you realize we went through a reform where now the management produces a response with an action plan, and that's what we hold them accountable to, the action plan. This time, the management action record is based on 63 recommendations from 23 evaluations that we have been tracking. The good news is that there was a level of agreement expressed for all recommendations, some partial and some fully. And partial is not necessarily a bad thing. It's fine as long as a rationale is provided. Next, please. So 100% fully addressed recommendations, 80% actually listed a set of concrete actions, 20% provided some preliminary actions or discussed conditions under which actions would be met. A time frame was not specified in about 15%. Next slide, please. So here we find that roughly half have actually been implemented with substantial status or high status, medium about close to a third, and negligible 6%. Now you'd say, where is there some disagreement? And next slide, please. So the disagreement, we agree actually on 55% with respect to implementation status, right? So that's a pretty good number. So the GEF Secretariat agencies and the IEO agree on 55%. Where there's a difference, it's a difference by one level, right? So it's not a major thing. So I think we've reached some level of understanding about how we need to assess how we are progressing on the actions taken on different recommendations. So we engage in a lot of KM, knowledge management, and communications, because to remain at the forefront of environmental evaluation. And I'm not going to be humble here, because we are recognized and we are the go-to team for environmental evaluation, whether it's on methodology, whether it's on findings, etc. So we engage with a lot of networks, the UNEG network, the evaluation network of the multilateral development banks. We're called to a number of forums. We attended Stockholm Convention. You know, we've covered the globe with respect to knowledge events. So that's again, and this is staff. This is not the leadership team. These are the program leads in our different environmental areas or in our methodologies, etc., who go out there and actually speak at these conferences. We also train. We train in person. It's capacity building is not a strong mandate of the IEO, but we are called upon sometimes to train people for a couple of hours. We have an online training tool, which I mentioned a year ago. To date, 1,800 people have actually taken the course, which is on the World Bank Group's website. Next slide, please. So we've been working on a new website. It's going to be launched in tandem with OPS 8, where you will actually get a readable format of OPS 8. So our evaluations are now going to be published in a web readable format where you can jump to the particular section that you want to read. It will no longer be just PDF files on our website. So these are some of the innovations, trying to get evaluation bites more digestible. Social media and content, we've seen a surge actually and a steady now increase. And believe it or not, people actually like to read evaluations and they like to tweet about our evaluations, contrary to what one would think about evaluations, right? So people are actually using it. You've seen some evidence of Eval Vision. This is our new web series, our video series that Jimmy, our one and only communications and knowledge officer, unlike many units which have, or evaluation units that have 20% of their staff in large teams of 100 focusing on communications and knowledge, we have one person lifting this load. And so what you've seen today is all Jimmy's work. Next slide, please. Coming to an important, the numbers. So the budget utilization for FY 2025, this is the peak year of our 4-year cycle. We've used 8.88 million, which is about 99% of the budget has been utilized. So, and this includes the 11% that we owed the World Bank, right? The World Bank is now deducting our 11% charge on a quarterly basis. So it's every quarter before we even get the resources for our use, 11% goes right up front ex ante. So our budget request for FY 2026 comes in at 12% less than the 2025. The fixed cost of 5.8 million, the variable of 1 million, not $1, 1 million, it's in millions. Office lease, and this again includes the 11% indirect cost. So we are trying to be even as efficient as we can. And so this is our budget request for FY 26. On human resources, we have stayed at about 20 staff for the last 9 years. We have not expanded the staff complement. And I would like the IO team to please stand up, because this is the team that is working on OPS 8 and the evaluation findings. So this is... And we all feel we're in graduate school once more, pulling all-nighters and all days producing so we can produce OPS 8 on time. So with that, I'd like to invite or request the council to approve the IEO's FY26 work program and budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Geeta, for that presentation. I'd now like to open the floor for any questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Floor is open. Ben has requested the floor. Floor is yours.
Geeta, I won't keep you from that glass of wine, but just to say many thanks to that. And yeah, we totally will agree with the decision for this item. I just had one question, which is in terms of the management responses. You talked about the way that GEF Secretariat produces responses in terms of their management response. And it'd be very useful to understand to what extent would be best practice in terms of including timeframes within those responses so that you can get a better management action record and approval rating, I guess. Thanks.
Many thanks, Ben. I'll now give the floor to Tsuyoshi-san, followed by the CSO network. Tsuyoshi-san, floor is yours.
Thank you, Naomi-san. I'd like to make a comment about budget request 2026. We commend the IEO Secretariat effort to make a more compact and efficient budget than the previous year in anticipation of the GEF 8 budget allocation of 30 million. The content of the IEO's evaluation needs to be appropriately reflected in the GEF 9 replenishment negotiations. In this viewpoint, we expect that the evaluation activities currently underway will adhere to the time schedule, and the input to the council will be provided on an ongoing basis. This time, I'd like to ask the technical question about the human resources. This document mentioned in para 37 that 2 additional staff may be required in the future, and this position will be accommodated within the overall envelope of 3 GEF family of funds. In this regard, I would like to know how you emphasize the cost sharing among these 3 funds. More concretely, whether it is correct to say that the cost will be prorated according to the nature of the work that said staff members will be engaged in. Because since each fund has a different donor structure, I believe that it is necessary to organize the situation in case the same time of action in the future. Thank you very much. Back to Chair.
Thank you very much, Yoshi-san. I will now give the floor to the CSO network.
Thank you. We welcome the financial year 2026 work program and budget of the Independent Evaluation Office. From the perspective of the GEF CSO network, the work of the GEF Independent Evaluation Office is very important to give a clear review of GEF's work and achievements and guide on necessary enhancements. We note the various ongoing and planned assessments, many of which will contribute to the 8th overall performance study of the GEF 8. The ongoing evaluation to prepare an updated assessment of the GEF small grants program will be important to generate additional lessons learned to support the further enhancement of small grant program in the coming years. The GEF CSO network is looking forward to contributing to this important assessment. In our view, the small grant program is one of the most important mechanisms to channel GEF resources directly to civil society, indigenous peoples, women, and youth. Moving forward to GEF 9, we are calling for a doubling of the resources to small grant program to enable effective scaling up of the SGP. Without the effective engagement and direct support to civil society, GEF will not reach its vision for a whole of society approach. With regards to the other assessments underway and planned for the coming year, we strongly encourage IEO to take a multi-stakeholder and participatory approach to distill experience and lessons learned to contribute to GEF vision, goals, and the plans in GEF 9. The GEF CSO network looks forward to being actively involved with the IEO in its work. We are committed to supporting the IEO to engage CSO in the assessments of GEF projects. Participation of civil society organizations, indigenous peoples, women and youth in the work of GEF is essential for GEF to reach its goals. Let's work together to make this happen. Finally, I want to thank IEO for their distinguished efforts. Thank you.
Many thanks to the CSO network, and I don't see anyone else requesting the floor, neither on Zoom nor here in the Preston. So back to you, Kita. That concludes our list of participants.
Thank you. So Ben, on the management action record, this was done in two stages. First is as part of the reform. One is first to get council to endorse the management response as opposed to the IEO recommendation. And I think we've achieved traction on that. And the second stage was, can we move more towards outcomes that we can actually see progress on? So action plans with timelines. So I think with management, we've moved in the right direction. I think a few more, maybe 15 to 20% of the responses or the action plans still need concrete timelines, I think, and it depends on the item under consideration. And we've also agreed that if it takes time to respond to particular recommendations, maybe the GEF Secretariat could come 6 months later with a more detailed action plan and not, given they have only 8 weeks to respond to our recommendations. Yoshi-san, on the GEF, we will make sure that evaluation activities continue because our evaluation trust fund, not the operations budget, but the evaluation budget actually flows from one replenishment period to the other. It's a carryover fund, and we will make sure that we actually have resources left over so that the work can continue. On the 2 additional staff positions and the cost sharing across 3 funds. So our staff actually shared time across the different funds. So we have a senior evaluation officer spending time on LDCF, SCCF, and we are actually a detailed time recording system in our office on how much time is explicitly spent on each of these funds in our office. GBFF came into existence last year. We received resources thanks to the council, but we did not hire because we wanted to see the maturity of projects and the maturity of the fund before we went on a hiring bench of getting two new staff members. We understand right now that our parent institution has frozen positions, et cetera, and that no new hiring is taking place. We have 2 senior staff in the IEO who will be retiring next year. So even if we don't add new positions as an increment, we will have the ability to hire 2 staff in exchange for those retiring. And the CSO network, thank you. And we are involving civil society. We are taking lessons from our friends at the climate investment funds who actually have civil society as observers and participants in the evaluation process, and we intend to do more of that going forward. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Geeta. With those comments, and I see there's no more comments, I invite the Council to adopt a draft decision that is included in the document GEF/E/C69/05. I see no objection, so consider the document agreed. Thank you. With that, I apologise. Maybe it's the reference to karaoke meant that we got through that agenda item quicker than we anticipated. So we're hoping we might just add in one more item to quickly consider before we leave. We're proposing to consider agenda item 13. So hopefully that's quite quick. So on that, I would like to invite Mr. Filippo Bernardi from the GEF Secretariat to introduce document GEF/69/10, draft amendments to the Memorandum of Understanding between the Conference of Parties to the UNFCCC on Climate Change and the Council of the Global Environment Facility. I'll now hand the floor over to Filippo. In one moment, they're just organising themselves.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the honor of leading the climate change focal area at the GEF Secretariat, and will be providing you with a short introduction of agenda item 13. This item presents the draft amendments to the Memorandum of Understanding between the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the GEF Council. The proposed amendment responds to a decision taken at the 29th Conference of the Party to the UNFCCC, which took place in November 2024 as decision 4/CP29, which includes the guidance to the GEF. Currently, the COP provides guidance to the GEF annually. This decision requests that such frequency be adjusted. Specifically, the amendment revises paragraph 3 of the MOU to state that policy guidance will be communicated annually after each COP session until the end of 2026, biannually thereafter, after every COP session, and additionally, after the COP session immediately preceding the final year of each GEF replenishment cycle. And finally, guidance will be provided following any other COP session should the COP decide to do so. Similar changes which aim to improve the efficiency of communication between the COP and the operating entities of the financial mechanism have also been decided in relation to the COP guidance to the Green Climate Fund. It is important to note that the frequency of the GEF reporting to the COP will not change, and we will continue to report annually. The amended MOU has been prepared in accordance with paragraph 13 and 14 of the existing MOU and will enter into force upon approval by both the GEF Council and the COP. With this, I thank you, and back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that presentation, Filippo. I'll now open the floor for any questions or comments. Over to you, Naomi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. Anders, floor is yours, followed by Anders.
Thank you. I don't want to stand behind in the way of the end of the day, but for the record, as we stated earlier in another agenda point, we are very supportive and positive of this reform. It's a way to make the work of the UNFCCC more efficient and to reduce the administrative burden on the Secretariat, which can then have the resources used to other purposes. So we would be very much welcoming on this, and we would also hope that this could serve as an inspiration and model for other COPs of the other MEAs to consider as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anders. We'll continue with Andre, Regina, and Joao. So, Andre, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I can only echo Anders. We agree with the draft amendments to the MOU between the COP of the UNFCCC and the GEF Council, and the proposed decision, which is in line with the guidance provided to the GEF from COP29. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Regina, floor is yours.
Gracias, Noemi. Thank you. The constituency welcomes the ongoing collaboration between UNFCCC COP and the GEF Council. Regarding the proposed amendment to paragraph 3 of the MOU, we note the shift of this annual to biannual communication policy starting in 2027. While we understand the intention to streamline processes and enhance efficiency, we would like to respectfully highlight a few considerations. First, regular and timely communication from the COP is essential to ensure that GEF programming remains closely aligned with the evolving priorities and guidance of parties under the UNFCCC. A reduced frequency may pose challenges in responding to urgent or time-sensitive guidance that may arise between sessions. In this context, we would welcome further clarification on the procedures or triggers that would enable the use of this flexible clause to ensure responsiveness is preserved. We would like to know how many extraordinary sessions could be held and under what concept or circumstances. Additionally, it may be helpful to assess over time the practical implications of this change on the GEF's ability to deliver timely and relevant support in line with the COP guidance. We support the continued efforts to enhance complementary and coherence in the climate finance architecture and emphasize the importance of maintaining effective institutional communication. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Regina. I'll now give the floor to Joao. Floor is yours.
Gracias, Noemi. Thank you. So our
Thank you, Noemi.
would like to welcome the continued strengthening of cooperation between UNFCCC and the Council of the GEF, and also thank the Secretariat for preparing the draft amendments to this Memorandum of Understanding. We acknowledge the decision adopted at COP29 and to revise the frequency of guidance provided by the COP to the GEF. We understand the rationale for streamlining communications while preserving the integrity of the guidance mechanism, particularly as we navigate a dynamic and increasingly complex climate finance landscape. In this context, we would like to welcome the comments made by Mexico, considering them something to reflect on regarding that reducing the timeline, the frequency of the guidance received by the COP should not hinder, for example, responsiveness and accountability by the GEF in regard to the implementation of this convention. Also should not hinder the safeguards for replenishment year input, including adequate developing country input into replenishment priorities, and also the alignment governance reforms with the principles of transparency, parity, and country ownership. In conclusion, our constituency supports the adoption of the amended MOU while encouraging vigilance to ensure that these adjustments result in more effective, not weaker, engagement between the GEF and the parties to the convention. Thank you.
Many thanks, Joao. I don't see anyone else requesting the floor, so I believe that will conclude the list of participants. So, Filippo, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Noemi, and thank you for your interventions. With respect to the point raised by Mexico and Brazil, I would like to reassure you that the adjustments only refer to the guidance that is provided from the COP to the GEF. And as we have mentioned, the GEF will continue its dutiful guidance on an annual basis to the COP. And this, I hope, will provide some comfort around the concerns that were raised. With respect to the possibility to request more frequent guidance from the COP to the GEF, this is within the realm of it's in the right of every party to the COP to do so, and this would be a request that is raised in the COP context rather than in the GEF Council context. So from our end, just to reassure everybody, we will continue to report and provide the information in a transparent and visible manner as we have done until now. Thank you.
Thank you, Filippo. I see no further speakers, so I'll now move to invite the Council to adopt the draft decision that is included in document GEF/C69/10. I see no objections, and the document's agreed. Thank you. So I think that closes the session for today. So I'll hand over to, do you want to make comments? Naomi, for some final instructions in relation to tomorrow. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Co-Chair. And with thanks to you all, Council, and to the co-chairs karaoke, we have concluded today's agenda items before time and even covered an originally scheduled item for tomorrow, which will definitely allow us to have more flexibility for tomorrow's discussions. With that said, so tomorrow only Council members, alternates, and advisors will start at 9 a.m. with their executive session on the SRC. This is both for people attending in person and online. To facilitate that, the Council team has placed some red stickers in your badges. So that's Council members, alternates, advisors who are welcome to join tomorrow's SRC discussions. If someone doesn't have the red stickers, let us know, and we can certainly facilitate that. For the rest of the Council, we will reconvene at 10 a.m. to start with the report of the chairperson of the STEP. Thank you very much and have a very nice evening. See you tomorrow.